All right, one and all, it's that time. So this is an interesting format because we're back into the DC sessions where we're going through and interviewing people that were there, interviewing people that are there or have been there within the DC scene, who've made a difference, who've just been a part of it all. Tonight, for the DC sessions, I've got the extreme honor of bringing in the one like Harry Ransom. And I'm going to let him do a bunch of the talking tonight. But when I first moved to DC and when I was coming to DC for parties, he would always be on the flyer somewhere. And if it wasn't the party I was going to, it would be the party that I wish I was going to. And so without any further ado, I'm going to undo his mic and bring the man into the room. Whoop.
Right. Hello.
How you doing there, man?
Doing well. How are you?
You know, I'm smiling. I can't complain.
Good.
So, man, start at the beginning with this whole nonsense. Like, how did you get? How did you get into DJing? Start there.
I grew up watching a lot of MTV. Specifically 120 Minutes, which is like the alternative show. So that exposed me to a lot of European music, Britpop music, a lot of indie music. Mm-hmm. But I was also a nerdy little hip hop kid. Like, nice. I grew up just outside of DC. We had this pay-per-view channel called The Box. Mm-hmm. And it was, a 900 number, and people would call in. And there was like a code for videos. And so you just saw a lot of, I don't know, sort of like independent hip hop, I guess at that time, like early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s. And then I had MTV, and there was Yo MTV Raps, and there was 120 Minutes, which I liked.
Yeah. And
then sometimes I'd watch the Headbangers Ball, but it really wasn't my thing, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But, one of the artists I got into through the 120 Minutes was Bjork.
Nice.
So I got into drum and bass because I had a crush on Bjork.
Nothing wrong with that.
And I used to read magazines a lot. I started buying music. Like, we can go through like the first music I bought, the Verst, all that. But by the time I was in high school, I was buying a CD or two every week. And I would also buy Spin and Rolling Stone. And Bjork was getting a lot of press. Mm-hmm. And her love life was also getting a lot of press. And they kept bringing up this guy, Goldie. He had an album come out. It was like the big thing in London and, drum and bass. And I'm like, I like Bjork. I like bass because I was into car audio stuff in high school. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm going to buy this album. So this is summer of 95. I buy Goldie Timeless. I'm pretty sure I bought it at Tower Records in Annapolis, Maryland. I also bought like a compilation, I think called Counterforce. Uh-huh. I didn't realize what was on it until years later. But there was like a Goldie track on it. There was like DJ Crystal, Warp Drive. If we go on Discogs, we can see what was on it. But that introduced me to music. But because of all the MTV stuff, I had an idea of what DJing was, but I thought DJing was pretty much scratching. Mm-hmm. I didn't know about mixing and blending until a little bit later. But after that summer of 95, I entered my freshman year of college, university, and met a lot of kids from out of state. And a lot of them went to raves. And they were like, you should come. They're like, we know you already like, dance music. You should come out. Like, you'll probably like some of the DJs. So I went to my first party, like rave party, early 95 or early December 95. Yeah. I don't remember who played. Maybe it was like Frankie Bones. It was definitely like a techno house heavy lineup that night. Mm-hmm. I just remember being in like the big warehouse part. I remember a lot of the people there were dressed baggy, like they looked like skaters to me. Like there's one girl that stood out because she had an outfit that was like a red polo shirt, like super clean red polo shirt, and she had a red baseball cap on, like a fitted red baseball cap on backwards, and a backpack. And she was very like sweet to us. Like I'm sure she could tell that we were not ravers, but maybe she offered us water or something. And I have no idea who that was. Like I don't know if I ever saw her again, but it just kind of like left an impression that this was potentially like a safe place to like hang out. And then the next month went to Baltimore. There was an event called Rise that used to happen up there.
Yeah.
I never got to go to Rise, but we went to the Rise warehouse because someone did something for like a month there. And I heard Jungle for the first time on a sound system. It was Dara.
Your first, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I definitely remember hearing 6 Million Ways to Die. Like, I feel that at that time, he was playing a lot of like, hard step and like jump up, like Chronic and Ganja Records, like Frontline. It was before True Players. I think True Players was like a few months later that they started to put stuff out. Mm-hmm. But I remember hearing 6 Million Ways to Die. And I was like, this is awesome. I immediately, like, I was in college, we had email, immediately signed up to listservs. Like email listservs were the big electronic community at that time. So I was on DC raves and I think NE raves, like Northeast raves.
Yep.
And they threw a party in Baltimore in 96, probably like February or March. I've seen pictures of it in the last few months. Like I found pictures of it.
Really?
I can't remember if it was called Mosaic or not, but the lineup had 2 jungle drum and bass DJs on the lineup. Time Stretch from Boston, which is where I now am.
Okay.
And Method 1.
Right on.
He was going to school in Richmond, Virginia. And
really?
Yeah, but he's from the Philadelphia area. He's out in the Bay Area now. And he's still releasing music. Like I can't remember if he was on 31 Records recently. Like he's still putting out music. Like if you want to get into like US history, Jason Method 1 is probably one of the key people to talk to, even if he hasn't had like a lot of limelight on him.
All right.
But yeah, the first mixtapes I ever bought was a Time Stretch tape and a Method 1 tape. I can't remember the Time Stretch tape that well, but the Method 1 tape, I think he's got it ripped online somewhere. And it was a lot of that like 95 metalheads. Just, nice. I don't know, super, super vibey, like an edge to it, but really cool, like futuristic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was into it.
So now you've gotten into it. You've put yourself in as a dancer, or at least someone who's going to these parties.
I got comfortable. I eventually like would move on the dance floor.
Right.
I wasn't one of those. I'm not Jason Encryption. If you want to talk to someone that was a dancer in the DC drum and bass scene that then went on to become a DJ, Encryption is like. I before he ever DJ'd, like people knew who he was because he was so prominent on the dance floor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then how did you end up getting behind the decks?
So that 96, probably like March, April or so, I'd started to meet people on campus. Like I was living on campus. I was in a special dorm I was in a program that was environmental studies. So like my floor and the floor above, we were all environmental studies scholars. We had classes together. But so that created like the initial group of friends. But then you start to branch out, you meet people like a couple quads over. And I met a group of people that were going to raves. They were all trying to DJ. Everyone was trying to DJ something different though. Like not on purpose, but like You know, there was this guy Dimitri, and he was like a house DJ, and then there was like this guy Matt, and he was more of a breaks or trance DJ, and then there was Ben Coe, who's gonna figure into this story a lot more as we go in.
Okay.
I don't know what Ben was trying to play at the time, but everyone was talking behind his back that he liked to jungle. And my first impressions of him were not great.
Okay.
Like, you know, he was too cool. And but for some reason, like, we kept talking on email, and he was like, "Oh, if you have records, I have turntables. You can come hang out in my dorm." And I started buying records. I
was gonna say that's a golden ticket.
Yeah, I probably had like 10 records by the end of the semester, and would go over to his dorm room and hang out, and we would try to mix. He was better at it. I was terrible. It took me 2 years to learn how to beat match.
Oh wow!
Like, everyone's got a different learning curve. Like, you know, now I'd be like, yeah, beat matching. It's just, you know, syncing up track A and track B. In my head at that time, I was also dealing with a lot of personal stuff at that time. There was a lot of changes that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partly why I fell into the rave scene, is like I needed something safe. But, you know, just dealing with a lot in my head. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, like, there was this hurdle that I couldn't get over initially. And I don't know, 2 years later, I could beat match and I was playing shows. But first trip though, I see Andy's in here. He's he's gonna appreciate the shout out. Maybe the group of us, like, no one had cars on campus really, but this guy Dimitri did, and he was like, "We're gonna go to Tower Records in Rockville." We're like, "Why are we going to Tower Records?" He's like, "Trust me, we're going to Tower Records in Rockville." So it's 4 of us load up in the car. We go up. The biggest, like, vinyl section of dance music, just loaded with music. The thing is, I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew, okay, look for the tag that said jungle drum and bass. Oh, there's like 20. It felt like 20 bins of records. I found 6 Million Ways. Like, the first 3 records I ever bought: Dope Skill, 6 Million Ways to Die on Frontline.
Wow.
Formation Records, there was a compilation called Highly Recommended. It had like Rollage VIP, and I don't know, there's some like classic tracks on it. V V V I P P P P dub blate business. Yeah, and then, you know, you start getting into collecting mixtapes, and you start hearing like all the British DJs have an actual VIP dub plate of the track, like spelling out their track. You're like, oh my god! Like, you know, you buy a tape pack, and like all 8 DJs have like their own version of that track. But the third record I got, Lemon D, Urban Style Music on Metalheads.
Nice.
This is LA on the flip. So, and that's just like, I just start buying records. Jump to 2 years ahead, I also amassed $12,000 of credit card debt, because no one really talked to me about credit cards and the responsibilities that come with debt management
and interest rates.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So I had a lot of records. Yeah. Jump to like 2 years later. I had a lot of records. I had an Emu sampler that did not instantly make me sound like optical.
Nope.
And yeah, I also had a lot of fun experiences because I took some trips using the credit cards. Went to Colorado. Who knows where else? Definitely went to like New York and Philadelphia for parties. I went to Colorado to snowboard for my 21st birthday.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and it took like 7 years to pay all that off, but I did pay it off.
Cheers to paying it off.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, maybe we'll have me back in 6 months where I can celebrate paying off my actual student loans.
Hey, cheers.
Close
I just did that.
Yeah. I want to pop out the chat. I can't remember.
So now you've busted into, you know, buying a ridiculous amount of records.
Mm-hmm.
But you also bought a sampler. That means that you were starting to dig deeper into this whole scene and get into the production end of it.
Yeah, I mean, jumping from 96 to 98, there's a lot that happened.
Okay.
Like, I had like my core group of friends from college. Like we were the drum and bass kids that wanted to. I mean, we were going to drum and bass parties every week. Usually in DC and Baltimore, but we would travel occasionally. Like my one buddy Todd, who I don't know if he'll ever pop up in the chat. He was from New Jersey. He grew up as like a hardcore techno kid in New Jersey. First day I met him, I was working in my dorm, and he shows up to check in with I can't remember if he had the fuzzy orange pants or if that was his roommate. His roommate corrupted into like being into raves, but he had a Rabbit in the Moon t-shirt on, and I was like, "You go to parties?" Because I didn't look like, I still wasn't comfortable wearing like Jinkos, even though
wearing the swag yet.
Yeah, I definitely bought a couple pairs like in '96, but after that first year, I just went to buying like oversized jeans from Old Navy and like cutting the legs.
Nothing wrong with that. Actually, hold on one second. Hey, welcome in, Raiders. Good to have you in the chat. Big ups to one like E-Rock there. Thank you so much. What was the celebration that you were rolling with there, E-Rock? Do let us know in the chat. Good to see you there, Church of Drum and Bass. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but got to give the chat a little love.
Actually, shout out to Church of Drum and Bass. I caught him on a Curly Rollers show last week. That was a interesting, conversation. I think that's only the second time I've seen Curly's show, but
Curly's show is amazing. In church, like I wake up to him now. I do my morning biking sessions where I go biking for coffee, and I'm just listening to him while trying to bike and chat at the same time. It's gonna get me in trouble one of these days.
Yeah, I can't. I could not exercise with like a podcast on, but straight dance music.
That'll work.
I need to exercise though.
Fair enough. All right, so back into your crew has expanded a little bit. You've met someone else.
Yeah,
who's also into the party scene, and you're slowly starting to get into the fashion of it.
Yeah, the Jingo part was '96, and that ended probably by the time I met Todd. Then the other thing is there was a girl from my high school that was a year behind, and I remember going to like a house party the night of their graduation. So I had just like moved back home for the summer, and running into Kat. And she's like, we knew each other in high school, but like we had circles of friends. We hadn't really hung out. But she was like, "So what are you up to in college? Like, what's going on?" I was like, "I've been going to parties." And she like the way I said it, she's like, "What kind of parties? Raves?" And she's like, "Oh, like what?" I was like, "I've been going to Buzz and Fever." She's like, "I'm going to Fever next week." And I was like, "Really?" So we became rave buddies.
Nice.
And Kat would come and pick up me and Todd on campus like pretty frequently that year. And it was the three of us, and we had like other people that kind of like circled into the car at times. But '96 was the year that like cemented drum and bass as my favorite music.
Okay.
Like two of the best parties I ever went to. I mean, several amazing parties happened in '96. Like I remember Andy's interview, and he's talking about the Bookham show that had Trace as a surprise guest. I took my student, who was supposed to be my roommate the next year. He had never been to a rave. We convinced him to go, and we show up at the warehouse that was in Tacoma Park with AK 1200 playing at like 10:30 at night, 11, and it got shut down like before midnight. And then there's this huge caravan up to Baltimore because Lonnie Fisher was like, "We'll just move the party to my warehouse." And he had it was Azar Court or Raza. It was like the Raza warehouse, but Azar Court. So that was where he lived. And I had been to a party there once before, that Any Raves thing that Method One played. But yeah, this drum and bass rave caravan like hiked up to Baltimore. People were like playing by 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Like I think when I got there, Carl K was playing in MC Dub 2. And then I don't know if Slant got to play early or if he played late. But yeah, Carl K, LTJ Bookham, and then there was a surprise DJ Trace set. And DJ Trace just, I don't know, he has followers here. Like it just DC people love Trace. you met a lot of people from, at that time, people traveled for parties. And I remember meeting a bunch of people from Philadelphia or from Pittsburgh. And we'd hear about Steel City Jungle. That was like the big weekly that happened up there. But everyone in my group of friends were like, Diesel Boy, like Diesel Boy's from Pittsburgh. And these kids were like, nah, Andy Stein, he's the best in Pittsburgh. So, Andy and Diesel Boy are like best friends. So
That's awesome.
But you hear about Andy Stein, and there's just so much. I don't know. This is gonna be tough for me because I feel like I'm just gonna ramble. Like,
and that's what this is all about. We're collecting the story of DC. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand. Some of us are transplants, me included. I came in. I was driving from Ohio to DC from '97 until 2002 for parties, and then I moved here permanently in 2002, and so that's where like my story in DC begins. But it's collecting everyone else's story because there's so many of them out there, and so many. Not only like epic things have happened here, but also epic people have played here, and we've got a story to tell.
DC, like in hindsight, or even way back, like 15, 20 years ago, I was of the opinion DC was spoiled for talent. Like between Too Tough and Buzz, the number of shows between them was just amazing. Like the tours that came through, that you could see it on a Friday night or a Saturday. Too Tough was doing more on weeknights, but they were bringing in stuff that was like, crazy tours. Then you started getting stuff like, I mean, this is jumping years, but like Sunday night sessions and I mean, like that's the other thing is I'm gonna forget so much stuff. Like I feel like I'm gonna slight people with
and you know what?
You can't remember.
Just remind people that gray matter is a lot like Swiss cheese. Yeah. Things will fall through the holes. You
ask me what RAM 0116 is, I'll be able to tell you like right off the bat. But who threw the party like on 4th of July and whenever, I'd be like,
yeah, no.
And the thing is, I wasn't like a hard partier. That year of '96, there was definitely experimentation. But then it became like, well, if I spend money on E, I can't buy records. And the records look cooler and they're more fun. And so, that's like how the record collection obsession started.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Now here, remind me for a brief moment because, and I'm going to jump ahead on you, but like, I have a feeling that either through one of the forums or Craigslist at some point in time, you were offloading your records before you went to Boston. Was that you?
Yeah, I've offloaded records a few times.
All right, because like there was I forget what you were offering at the time. I was low on funds, but I was kicking my teeth in trying to like make it. I feel bad about that, but
you can talk to Jules. He picked up most of them.
I'm sure he did.
Those were actually mostly white labels. That was at a point like we can get into the whole like how people DJ thing. I like Serato. I like digital format, but I love vinyl too. And I switched from more of a digital format DJ and vinyl collector. And so if a white label, if there was a release copy of that tune, I would rather have the release copy. Like if the record was that important to keep in my collection, I want to have the artwork. I want like the John Black magnet design, Ram or Metalhead's sleeve, or it just, there's so much cool design that came out of drum and bass that I wanted that. And I wanted to be a snapshot of like, I want to be able to pull out a record and be like, I remember when I heard DJ Randall play this at Buzz and it got rewound 3 times and everyone's flipping out. And it was just, it was Optical to Shape the Future remix, just the record. But records.
They're glorious. Now,
But-
so you've got a crew.
It was more of at that point. It was more of a party crew, but I was also still talking to Benko and running into him at shows, and he was getting more into drum and bass. He started working at Tower Records in Rockville.
Nah.
And so I was seeing him almost weekly. Like he worked a cash register, and I actually ended up knowing a few people that worked at that particular tower.
It all comes back to Tower Records.
It does, yeah. And yeah, it just kept picking up records. But then you learn about mail order. So Breakbeat Science and Forefront in Boston were like the two shops that I was ordering from. So much records. Forefront was a little tricky. Scotty Static was the guy that ran it, and he is a salesman. He knew how to sell anything, and there were so many records. The first time I offloaded records, it was a lot of white labels, because by the time I was DJing, I wanted to have something that set me apart music-wise. I couldn't scratch.
Yeah.
Initially, I didn't have like dubs. Like that wasn't something that most US people had access to at in the mid to late 90s. The only people that really had access to dubs were like Carl K. And but that was also limited scope. Like I didn't know what was going on in New York too well. Like I knew names from New York. But yeah, white labels, and there was Metatrak. I don't know if were you here when Metatrak Studios existed?
I was here for that, yeah.
Okay. So Julia, who ran that, started to allow people to sell records from there. And I was living in DC for a year, not too far from there. And so I offloaded maybe 500 records.
No, wow.
Well, mostly white labels or stuff that I was kind of like, I don't know why I have this record. Because I was spending like $100.
Sounded great in the shop.
Yeah, I was spending like $100 a week on records. Actually, it wasn't on the shop; it was over the phone.
I was just talking to someone about that, because they're like, "What do you mean you were listening to records over the phone?" I'm like, the guy would put the phone up to the speaker and play me tracks, and I'd be like, "I'll take that." Nah, skip that one.
Yeah.
I'll take that next one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting mixtapes. I had found someone online to trade tapes, or actually, you just pay for blank tapes, and he would you'd get this list of stuff that he had. So I was getting UK like rave tapes by like 97. Nice. And playing those on the phone to the guys at Breakbeat, like, what's this? And like, it's a dub plate. It's probably not coming out for a year. And sure enough, it was like Warhead, and there was a Concept 2 track on RAM that I just went crazy for. Like, it's got this really warpy bass. Not Unlock the Secrets, No Mistake. And I remember playing that on the phone for someone at Breakbeat Science, and you just hear them just be like, it's not going to be out for 6 months.
You're not the first one to ask.
Yeah. I ended up becoming friends with some of the guys at Breakbeat Science. Like, I'm still in touch with a few of them.
Nice. So now you'd mentioned that you picked up a sampler.
Yes. So after my party crew, Benko hanging out, Ben dropped out of University of Maryland. He started to go to Montgomery Community College. I was involved in college radio at University of Maryland. He got involved in college radio at Montgomery Community College. Theirs just played to like the cafeteria, but he had met, it was Benson Rec. Benson Rec was the main one that Ben met at Montgomery Community College. And Benson was tied to Jeff Freefall, who's still around. He'd be a good one to have on to talk about beer and drum and bass.
That's awesome.
And there was also Philip Stevens, who I can't remember what his DJ name was back then, but then he went by Damage for a little bit. Philip's still around. Like, he produces. We haven't talked in a bit, but he's a DC person. They started a DJ crew. They booted Philip out like within the first month. I don't know if it's because he was like a jerk at a house party or something. Like, something happened and they were like, "You're out." But it was Ben, Benson, and Freefall. And I wanted to be in a crew so bad. Like, I was like you see Too Tough, and you're just like, and there's Snowball Collective, and like it's these crews of DJs, and like they're all representing like whatever sound they're into, and like they're doing stuff, and I was like at the tail end of, I guess, second generation of drum and bass in DC. Like,
Mhm.
you know, 2 years from, I just saw that Rob F, he's later, Rob 1,
Yeah.
his first party was like summer of 95, the first party he played. Like, I thought he was there like in 93, 92. But that may have been more, I guess Daniel Slant's probably like the first real flag bearer of drum and bass, like DJing in DC, and then Rob.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Seamus, who was part of Snowball Collective. I remember the name. I know his girlfriend from the time, Terry, because she got involved with like a bunch of girls that I was friends with. Like they had like their little girl, like not little, but they had like their girl drum and bass like crew of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, random tangents. But yeah, I ended up Step Syndicate. I wanted to be a part of it. Benson, I think, was friends with this guy, Jucata, James Finnerty. And James was into production. Like early on, he wasn't, I don't think he was the first person in DC that started dabbling with drum and bass production. I feel like there was a guy named DJ Garth or Garth Vader. I feel like that was someone that was involved with Where the Wild Things Are. Like he may have played that stuff. But James was someone that, like, in my circle of friends, he was into production. He was like, you need a sampler and a synth. Like I remember he had a Juno 106. And yeah, he signed some music. He had like a couple vinyl releases on Advanced Recordings, which was like a US label out of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But him and Benson were roommates for a while. And so I was like, I got to get a sampler. I want to learn how to make this stuff. Didn't go that way. I just, instantly bought that. Like, I knew a couple parts that I needed to get. No idea how to use it. It was years before I actually had an idea of how to use it. It was actually UFO from San Francisco that taught me how to really use an EBU sampler.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But at least you still had it. I mean, I would have known multiple cats that would have picked it up, like, been like, too hard, and just like, they chucked it in the back of their closet or sold it off and bought more records.
Yeah. I was being irresponsible with the credit cards.
Well, we all have our learning curves.
And just real quick, no use for anger. Do you know George Kinetics from Indy? Because I chat with this guy from Indy recently, and he's got friends that like know Ed from, like, I guess Ed lived in Indy at some point. I only knew Ed from the Bay Area when he was like Funkatech. But yeah, it's just drum and bass. Like, you could go to any city and be like, I like drum and bass. I like drum and bass too. Cool, let's talk. Like, and then you're crashing on someone's couch.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I don't know. It was that was like the fun punk rock part of it. So.
And it's funny because it is such a offshoot. You always find that the drum and bass is always in the side room, and so those that are into it are really passionate about it, much like the punk rock scene. And it's to that same level, it's very DIY at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we will make it happen one way or another.
And I feel like drum and bass like attracted a lot of I don't want to say futurists, but like people with like future ideals and people that are really into the design. Like, that was one thing about DC and Flyers. You had like Airline Industries and then EveCom.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the people that were making the event flyers. John Bowen, who did all the Too Tough stuff. And then they had the guy Chadwick. I remember Andy talking about Chad. Like, he was a designer. So like there was like this, branding, aesthetic, just visual. I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff that came with drum and bass.
It's true. And, you made the comment that, DC was kind of lush with talent. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, and like, unless you're within a crew or unless you have something special to bring, breaking in is going to be painful unless you're going to go off and do your own damn thing. But so you jumped in with the syndicate here, the Step Syndicate.
So I was basically like, I don't want to say mascot. Like, I couldn't piece together. Like, the first time I tried to play a show was 97, so like a year into DJing.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Sarah came, and then Benson Rec came, and that was it. It was the Grog and Tankard in Georgetown. That's like a old, like, usually they have bands there. They had bands. I don't know if it's still there. But yeah, it was a terrible, terrible set. I remember I'd played like a Renegade Hardware track. That's like the only thing I remember from it. Probably like Triton or something. Like, that was very 97. And I was so embarrassed, even though there were only 3 people that saw it, and 2 were friends. So I didn't try playing out again until 98.
Okay.
So, but in 97, like, I had already met Benson, was hanging out, and I wanted to be in Too Tough, or not anyone, not Too Tough, Step Syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
Step Syndicate, we wanted to be Too Tough. Like, Too Tough was like, the standard for what we were into. We were like very into the UK style of mixing drum and bass, and this, like, what we were hearing at Too Tough parties. Like, I remember going to Dementia and hearing Ed Rush. Like, it was Ed Rush's North American debut, and it was, I was there with like all the Step Syndicate guys.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wasn't good enough to be a DJ in the crew initially, but I was pushing them and like actually helping getting people booked. I remember Deep was an event that happened DuPont Circle. It's like 18th Street, more north. And yeah, eventually I was also involved in college radio, and eventually like my mixing got better. Like, I went from Trainwreck Harry to competent Harry. But that, like, learning, it just, the skill set just shot up, I think. Mm-hmm. So, because by 99, I played like Eclectic in San Francisco. I played Platinum. I played Too Tough stuff. I played a bunch of Too Tough stuff. Like, they had I think I may have sent you the flyer. They had a DJ battle. I can't remember if it was 98 or 99. But I didn't place in the battle, but I guess I showed something that, like, it was like, okay, he's safe to have as an opener. Because I know I opened for Bailey. Well, it was probably me, then Slant or Stress, or Slant and Stress, and then Bailey. But yeah, I got to play a few Too Tough shows. And then started getting involved in trying to throw stuff. So,
right. And how did that progression go? Like, as far as like going from DJing to then like, okay, now I'm gonna put together the party.
Yeah. So I think I got involved in promotion, not just like promoting my friends for gigs, but I think I may have helped promote for Wild Things, which was like the weekly drum and bass party for a bit. It had been on U Street. I remember the first time I went to it in U Street, like Slant played. There's like Reinforced Enforcers 9 and 10. He played like 2 of the tracks from that, and like, it just seared into my mind. They moved to a venue that eventually became 5 on 18th Street and Northwest. And I don't know if I started promoting for Buzz at some point. Like, there was a period where I was involved in driving DJs. I also had DJ Crust yell at me one time, driving him. It was just, don't meet your heroes. It just getting involved, like wanting to be a part of it, getting active. And yeah, it also, if you were involved in throwing stuff, like the opportunities to play became greater. And I was actually involved in trying to throw a weekly at Red.
Okay.
Before Too Tough had done it, probably like 2 years before Too Tough had done it. This guy that I knew from University of Maryland, he was more of like a punk rock hardcore kid, but he was into drum and bass. His name's Justin Juvenile. He's actually a crime reporter for the Washington Post now.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So Justin was super into sampling, like before I was, and he wanted to do a drum and bass party at Red. He called it Evil Vibes, which people were like, why are you calling it Evil Vibes? That's not cool, man. But that was it. Like, you look up the track Evil Vibes, like, it's got great samples in it. Like, it's probably been sampled in a bunch of hip hop tracks. And when I got involved in helping him with it, it was maybe like 3 or 4 weeks into it, and we booked Sage. Okay. Because I became involved like in all these different online communities. The Breaks list was like a big email list. I don't know if that's how I met people from Pittsburgh, but Nick Bulletproof, Bagel, I forget who Bagel, he used to, Jay, Alaska. So we did a party where it was Alaska and DJ Squared, who were from Pittsburgh, and they came down with Nick Bulletproof because Nick used to sell merch and mixtapes at shows in the DC area. Bulletproof, if you ever, I don't know if they had wrapped up before you moved down here. Oh, but you're from that area. Do you remember like the cardboard mixtapes that came in like cardboard packaging?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Nick Bulletproof.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So he has a skateboard company now. Yeah, Scumco and Sons. If you need a wood riding deck, Scumco. But Nick's like probably one of the best like merchandise like branding people that came out of the scene. Like just so much cool stuff, and he's carried that on over the years. Now he's got this like skate deck company. Like if you go on Thrasher, like you can look up Scumco, and like some of his pros have videos on there. But they came down, and it's like Nick was into really beat up old cars. Like it may have been like a 1970s, I don't know, collector piece. He may have had trouble, but we got kicked out of Red. Like that night, like they just did not like the music that was being played. I think they turned on the system like 3 hours early, and we were just kind of like, I guess we lost the party, and we were supposed to have Sage like a week or two later. And because she was going to do like a East Coast tour, I guess. Like she was her profile was building up, and she was going to fly out and play a bunch of shows. And so I had to cancel that. But then 3 months later, Ben Coe and I were like, let's go to San Francisco. Like, let's just book a trip and go to San Francisco. I heard they have great drum and bass parties there. So I got in touch with Sage, and she was like, oh yeah, you can open at Eclectic. Like, hi, we haven't met. We've talked on email a handful of times, but here, have an opening slot. And she's like, I'm not going to be there. My boyfriend, who was UFO at the time, it's like, he's going to be there. So Ben and I played a tag team set. We had MC Duh. That was the first time we met MC Duh. He's like one of my favorite MCs, like just silly, really witty, good wordplay. And then Todd, who my buddy from university from like 96, he had dropped out of University of Maryland, moved up to Salem, Massachusetts, like north of Boston, like in 97. We had kept in touch on email. I told him about this trip, and he was like, oh, like me and my partner might go too. So he books a trip, like met his partner at the time. He shows up at the party. He bought Tech Itch's album for me from Forefront Records and brought it. Like we were meeting at the club. Like this is the first time I've seen him in 2 years. And he like comes in with like, I can't remember if it was Diagnostics or whatever. And it was just, I just remember playing the super acidy, like there's a track on there that's like super acidy. Like maybe it was made in Rebirth, like a 303 acid track. And we're playing the opener slot. We probably had no business playing what we were playing in that opening slot, but the crowd there was just super into it. Like met so many people that night. I ended up meeting Ed UFO that night. Like went up to him and was like, hey, like I'm the guy from DC that like was supposed to book Sage and it fell through. And he's like, oh yeah, come to the house. Like they lived in Lower Haight. He was like, come hang out. So that trip became like me, Ben, and Todd and Phil, his partner, like just going to the Funkatech house like every day, and just Ed's like, we learned how to use an Emu sampler from TV because TV came and hung out. You're like, what? Like he came and hung out, this. I don't know. Like I had a chance to ask TB a question like another forum a few months ago, and I try to allude like TB's actually slept on my couch because I became at one point I was friends with like his US booking manager, and the guy, my house was like a wayward home for traveling DJs at one point. And TB needed like a layover night somewhere, and he was going to play a show in, I don't know, it was in Pennsylvania, like Gettysburg, Pennsylvania or something. So I was like, yeah, he can crash here. Like he probably doesn't want to remember. I couldn't tell you, but this is when synthetics, like this is the introduction of the synthetics into the whole DC thing. Okay. That they were getting recognition because they had been on No U-Turn already. and then TB wanted to sign an EP from them. So I remember picking up TB at the airport, taking him to Sterling, Virginia to hang out with Rob F and Impulse and give away like all their secrets, like all the hardware that they were using for their sound. And then, TB stayed at my house and he like practiced for his gig, like on my turntables. Like I was living with my mom for a year. It was just, like the end of college, and yeah, so many people crashed at my house.
You gotta love those stories, though. I mean, those are the sort of memories where you're like, yeah, and you did that.
So this forum that I've been on, Sample Genie, is like a production thing. TB is like one of the artists for the current season, and the service like hosted a Q&A with him. Like you had a couple weeks to post questions, and I didn't want to be like, you slept on my couch, because I'm probably stupid, but I try to allude to, like, do you understand how much you gave people in the States that then went on to get like spread knowledge to like other people? Like the TB now, like what I see posted online and like what he posts on social media is a much more humble person than TB from 20 years ago. But TB from 20 years ago was still doing like, he was sharing knowledge with people that made like a huge impact. Like who knows? I don't know what else the people at the Funkatech house, because it was like, UFO, Sage, Abstract, who became like huge. He's a big cornerstone of two-step, like dubstep in the UK, because he lived in London for a year and like had a track on Tempo that was huge. But like stuff that they learned, and like Echo, there's Chris Stanley, Echo, who became part of Violence with like Hive and all them, like what they picked up from TB, like staying there. And Caliber has like, because Sage she grew up in Northern Ireland, so she had connections to Caliber, like just what happened there. And then from there, like the way it just spread out even more. Like it just, I don't know. If I were going to get a PhD, like, would it be in drum and bass?
Well, it's watching the ripple effects, and where those ripples reached out and touched other people. I mean, it's why drum and bass is such a worldwide phenomenon, I think, in that regard, is that, it's rippled out, it's touched people, it's done exactly what you're talking about, as far as like that passing of knowledge.
And it's big. It's not like, sparklers and like fireworks big, but like there's like a steady current to it. Like there's definitely, there's, you go to England, it's huge. I mean, I guess in my head it's huge. I've only been to England once. New Zealand, it's huge. Like there's other pockets where it's huge. And then you've like the States is a bit tougher because we're so spread out, but there are definitely places where there's like a steady baseline.
And what's wild about that is that I think Twitch in particular has really highlighted those tiny communities that are so spread out via the States. And we're running into people that's like, oh, you've are into this music too, and you've been promoting this stuff for the last 20 years. Oh, me too. And we're all finding one another now because of this. So it's kind of the continuation of all those ripples.
It'll be interesting to see what happens after it's safe for events to happen again. With travel, like some sort of travel restrictions. Like, we're not going to see tours from UK artists that often, but are we going to see like a boost in stateside artists playing, like, spreading like beyond their region, more national? There's a bunch of people that are getting a lot of attention right now. Like, I talk with Winslow a bit. Like, he's got a Discord that I'm active in. You've got like Justin Hawks, who's down in Texas. Like, Los Angeles is probably the biggest concentration of drum and bass artists and DJs right now. Like, there's so much that's going to come out of there. And then you have people like from Canada, like all, the different provinces up there. Like, there's so, people are signing stuff. And are those like, are labels like, are some of the bigger labels like Hospital or Ram, are they going to make the effort to kind of invest in some people in North America to represent their brands, play their shows, could they send one artist instead of three? I mean, but that's the thing is you don't get those big. You weren't seeing the big tours too often, like the package tours. But
that's also where DC came into play because we had that international airport. And so, and yeah, we've got 2 of them, but the other is that if you're flying into England or Scotland, you either flew out of Boston or you flew out of DC. I mean, like that was that. I mean, you could fly out of Philly, I think. No, I'm pretty sure it was just Boston and DC for the longest time. Because whenever I traveled back and forth to go see family, it was like, which one of the 2 airports were we driving to? So.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Many a trip. So now here's a question. How did the name Ransom come about?
Drunk in a dorm room.
Already?
Yeah. It was me, Todd, my friend Sarah, she lived in my dorm. She was like a year ahead. She was from the area. She was a year ahead of me in university. She had moved out of our dorm to like upperclassmen dorms, lived in a suite with other ravers. And it was, like an off weekend. We were over there drinking because she was going to have a DJ gig and she needed a DJ name. And it was like this 3-hour brainstorming session. It just like, my DJ name was almost Snarf. Like, old title Snarf, like big up Thundercats, like,
Snarf.
Yeah, exactly. Like Todd won't let me live it down, and now it's like public knowledge that I almost played as DJ Snarf. We're throwing out all these DJ names, and when I said Ransom, I don't know where that came from. Although the next day, it's like I really like River City Ransom, but I can't claim that's like where the DJ name came from. When I said Ransom, Sarah like screwed up her fate because she was playing house. She screwed up her fate. She's like, "That's a jungle name. That's like a drum and bass name." And I was like, "It's mine." And yeah, that's how I ended up taking on Ransom. But then to tie it back to Andy Sign and the Pittsburgh guys, it was like, "Oh, you're cool if you're like the first name in your DJ name." So once eventually, like after a couple of years, like people just started calling me Harry Ransom because my last name's Schreckengoss. Like, no one can pronounce it really.
Well, especially if you watch it written out.
Yeah. Just, no, you don't know me. You just tripped up like your solicitor. My wife's last name is even difficult too. Like we had joked about hyphenating it just because it would just be a train wreck. But yeah, so people started calling me Harry Ransom. I did have several years where I played there's flyers with me listed as Harry Ransom. The other thing, this alphanumeric version of my name, that was my AOL screen. That was like my AIM screen name, like from '98.
Nice.
And yeah, my friend Juhi, hers was Girl Meringue. So,
all right,
bringing back Boy Meringue. But yeah, definitely elite speak.
It's funny how it's that continuation of tech. I mean, when I think of like we went from ICQ to Instant Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger that came on a disc. The internet just got slowly got wicked more and more faster. All of a sudden you could see a video online instead of like hooking up your acoustic couplers or your 56K modem that would shriek and make horrible sounds. And we were carving the way of the future with this sound as our backdrop. I mean, it's kind of wild. So then there seemed to be a time where if you weren't on, like I said in the intro, if you weren't on the party that I was going to on the lineup, you were on the party I wanted to go, but I didn't have the ride to go there. How did you get so prolific in the scene, like with the Step Syndicate and all?
Step Syndicate, we were tight for a couple years. We had like our larger friend group that would come out and see us play. We were doing t-shirts. I want to say we were probably the first to have a website, but it was hosted like on Benko's dad's like real estate page. It was like, you know, a sub page of his dad's real estate page.
Nice.
I also got blamed for I didn't bring up Bass Rush. It's like Fusion Productions, like Raymond, the Fusion mixtapes, Bass Rush mixtapes.
Yeah.
Like there's Bass Rush from Los Angeles. Years before Bass Rush Los Angeles, there was a guy that was throwing raves in the Baltimore area, and they were calling them Bass Rush, and they were definitely based on UK multi-room raves. You know, 4 or 5 rooms, a bunch of like, you know, international headliners, some regional talent, some local talent. And they tried doing a party in DC at the same venue that Too Tough had done Dementia. It was like Oakey Street Warehouse, which is it Ivy City? I can't remember the name of that area now. It's like the old Hex Warehouse. Mm-hmm. And yeah, bootleg rave tapes. And also my friend Todd was a bit of a kleptomaniac. We'd meet up to leave for the night from a party and be like, check out the mixtapes. Like I spent like $20 on mixtapes, and then he pulls out like 5 more tapes. And I was like, I didn't know you had that much money with you. And he was like, I didn't have any money. So, but yeah, the Bass Rush parties, they tried to throw one in DC, and we posted the lineup on our website. And one of their big promoters was this girl, Angela, who went to University of Maryland. People may have known her as Star. She's calling me, yelling at me, blaming me for getting the party canceled, like the permits pulled, saying, you know, it's because the police found, you know, this is like 97. Like, you know, who knows? But, yeah. Too Tough had a website soon after, but it was much more polished. Like, not like kids like, you know, Treehouse hobbled together website. But Benson Rec was studying graphic design. Like, he did our logo. Like, we had t-shirts. We did we had sweatshirts that were like embroidered. Like, you know, wow. We were a crew. Like, we were like, you know, we're gonna hit the parties, and like, we've got our sound. I don't know if you ever knew B-Bell, DJ Books.
No.
He was part of the crew for at least a year or two, and he got involved with Sunday Night Sessions, and Step Syndicate was we were almost called the Tech Step Syndicate, because that's like what we were really into as a group. And yeah, B-Bell started to diverge more into Jump Up, and we were like, that's not the Step Syndicate sound. And he's throwing a party with Jack Action Jackson on Sundays, and we're not getting to play. B-Bell, you're out of the crew. Definitely a jerk move. B-Bell's like one of the sweetest people. Like, he's still in the area. I think he's a chef now. Jungle Jesse it's like one of her closest friends.
Okay.
She's still in touch with him. But the thing is, like, we probably were hanging out with B-Bell like 2 weeks later still, just because, you know, he had like no malice in him. And we probably were like, we were jerks, you know. But yeah, just getting involved in a lot of stuff. It's funny seeing names recycled. I saw there's a group throwing stuff as Proper in DC right now.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're doing live streams. Like, they got one coming up, Quadrant and Iris from Seattle. I know Lee from when he lived in Philadelphia briefly, when Quadrant first started with 4 people. And his wife's Iris, Karen. But yeah, they're playing for this group called Proper, and Proper DC, I guess. We tried throwing a weekly back in like 98, 99 with the guy Ian. He was like a happy hardcore DJ. I can't remember his DJ name right now. Someone, I don't know, there's not a ton of people in chat yet, but someone might remember him. Roughneck Players crew was like his crew. But like, we threw a weekly for like 3 weeks on Sundays with him. But then we threw a giant party at the Edge. Mm-hmm. Staka, Skynet, Forensic, who is like the editor for Atmosphere magazine. I don't know if we had any other UK acts on that, but we did a party. Everything was under the name Proper, and the big rave was Proper Atmosphere, because Atmosphere magazine, like, that was their tour coming through.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot of names like come back. You know, someone's like, you know, DC DnB. That's something I haven't even touched on. That the whole DC thing. That was never really a crew. That was just like an email list. But yeah, I got involved in all these things, and like I was a bit of a connector. Like I would meet people, I'd be like, oh, you might like these people, like they live near you, or like, you know, these people are looking for someone to play. I still do it somewhat nowadays, like unintentionally, just kind of, you know, you see like the little connections between people, and you're like, you know, you should meet, you should talk, it's cool. And that landed me on lineups. I mean, yeah. What was the first? I think Act Your Age was the first thing I was involved to help throw. But Act Your Age was a direct result of the DC DnB listserv. Because, you know, a couple months into it, there was like a topic came up. Hey, there's maybe 100 people on this email list. And it just, there's this like call to unite DC like drum and bass people, and let's do a party. It was led up by this guy R.A. Cohen, who was going to American. He lives in the Boston area.
Okay.
In 2019, like after I just moved up here, I went to see Clute play, and like I hear Harry, and it's like the first time I'd seen R.A. in 15 years. He was a little mad with me like 15 years ago because I was a jerk to like one of his good friends, Robbie. And there's so many random stories. But yeah, Act Your Age started, and it was originally going to be just DC people. And so REA asked me, he asked Steve Eternal, who I saw you've talked to Steve a bit in the past, and Brad DJ Sever, who I can't remember if Brad won that Too Tough DJ battle or if he came in second. But like Brad was like a solid DJ. But the four of us became like the core group of Act Your Age. And it started as a Saturday night in Adams Morgan in the basement of an Ethiopian restaurant. And after like a month or two, the lineups became, wait, we're getting people coming out and people are paying a cover, and we can afford to book DJs occasionally. And we started booking regional people. Mm-hmm. I think like Andy Sign and some of the pit, like Bagel in Alaska. So like that group of like 412 DnB people. I don't know if we ever had Diesel Boy play at our first spot. He did play for us like eventually. But then eventually I was like, let's book someone international. We booked DJ Lee.
Nice.
Who was a little bit of a dark horse, but he was being offered for US gigs. He was a resident at Metalheads. Mm-hmm. It was just, you know, Metalheads just carried so much weight like in my circle of friends. And I feel like we booked him for like $300.
Oh, wow.
It was our first time like booking someone that had like contract riders, and it said he needed to have a 4-star hotel and, you know, per diem. And we're like, we got to do it. Like, we're going to do it. So I fronted the money for it. I lost like $200 on it. It was totally worth it. Like, he's one of my favorite DJs. I got to open up for him once before, like the first time I played in Philadelphia. We played for no one. Like, it was just us, like in this venue, this huge venue. But yeah, the party was rammed. I've never seen one human drink so much beer. Like, he just destroyed. Like, he was part of Timeless Records as well. He was like A&R for Timeless. So he had like everything digital in spirit. Mm-hmm. And he just was plate, just, you know, in this sweaty basement, like everyone freaking out. Just it's like the moment that you get into this, and it's like that kind of moment where you're like, this is amazing. Like, you know, just loved it. And he gave me some records. I was like, really? I'm just, you know, some kid in DC. Like, he gave me like white labels. I don't even know how long it was before they came out. It was definitely Timeless stuff.
That's awesome.
Then we also learned that like his contract was like the UK contract, and the hotel rating system is different. Because when he saw the hotel that we put him in, he just shook his head. He was like, I could have stayed at a Holiday Inn. You know, this is, you know, it was like $300 a night back in 99 or 2000. I can't remember when it was we had him. The Flyers somewhere. But yeah. After Age, then we moved from that venue eventually. Like we stopped doing Saturdays and we moved to a venue over by I don't know if it's still the Verizon Center, like where the Capitals and Wizards play. It was a venue called Insomnia. It was like a bottle service club. And I think they gave us Wednesdays. But once we moved there, I mean, I know we had Matrix and Fierce, MB, who was like on East Side, and Fuse. Like there were definitely a lot of, I think we had Trace at some point. And, a lot of the California, like, I don't know if we ever had RAW, but we had like UFO and Echo and Sage, Abstract. All these people. Party probably ran for a year. Damien Diesel Boy did a show for us it was him and Chaos, like right when Human Imprint I think was starting up. And the venue like we did everything in the second room, which is like maybe a 200 cap, but they let us have the main room for that night, which was like 1,000 cap, and we had 700 people on a Wednesday night.
Nice.
I got drunk and like Damien will like rib you, like he always gives me this like older brother vibe, and he'll like tease people. I think he does. I'm assuming he does it to people he likes, but like I've known him over the years. But I'm drunk and I'm like, you're a jerk. Like I just remember him and Chaos. Like then it just opened it up even more. Like we're gonna rib you even more. So be careful what you say about people too. I eventually met Dara. Like Dara, I was really cool with Dara. He had me play in New York. Like he did a web show called Velocity for a year or so. And there was like a month where I played like 3 shows with him in the area, like between DC and Baltimore. And there was a forum, I can't remember, it was like Drum and Bass America or DnB, and someone had started a topic like, your top 3 DJs. And I was like Groove Rider and someone else, and you can maybe Andy C or something. I was like, in Dara, I was like, but don't see Dara more than once in a month because he plays the same set. And then I get a phone call from him, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, I've done so much for you, and you go and just being a dumb 23 or 24-year-old that just thinking before they speak. And I think Dara, like, amazing person, like just super good guy.
Nice.
In my book.
And it's funny, you made the comment earlier, don't meet your heroes. I think it's a mixed bag. Like there are a handful of people that I've met that I've just been bowled over with, like how much they've taken like my respect I have for them to a whole nother level. And then there are others where I'm just like, okay, well, fair enough. I wish I hadn't met you in life.
Love your records.
Yeah, love your sound. You're kind of a jerk. But digress. So then how did we touched on DC DnB? Like when did that listserv come into play?
December of 99.
Okay.
I remember starting it. There were a bunch of people from the area that were posting on the Breakbeat Science forum, but that was more like a regional thing. Andy used to troll there. We knew that he was trolling. But whatever. Like I wanted to start something that was more local, try to like put people in touch. I think within a month of starting it, I had met Kiko, Alex Kiko. He had stuff on Ohm. Max Trone, who became part of a trio called Excella that was on Ohm, and Joe Ichiban. So I actually recently got in touch with Max Trone. He's back he's in Charlottesville, I think now. Nice. But we've chatted on email a little bit after like 15 years. They met some people, like all these people started to meet and like hang out, and then people end up on Ohm and records coming out. And then I remember meeting Rob F before Synthetics happened, and it's just like, I don't know you. I think so. We had an MC in our crew. It was this guy's son, MC Escher, and son was like a very brash individual, and I feel like he upset a lot of people with like stuff he would say, and I think that Rob or Josh may have given him a mixtape, and Son's like, I threw it out the window, you know, just like the ultimate diss. But I think Rob and Josh, I don't know, I don't think they met through the list, but they met other people through the listserv, and then they started getting signed. Like they were getting stuff signed huge places. No U-Turn was like the big one. Mm-hmm. But there is also an interview with Impulse where he says that he attributes them getting signed to No U-Turn to me because I gave their demo to Tara Weichel. I think that was her name, like in Seattle. I don't remember giving it to Tara. I don't know if I was involved in that story, but it was kind of like cool to be like, oh, the ripple effect. Like I gave it to this person and that person gave it to Fierce, and then Fierce gave it to Nico, and then Fierce is playing the track in the Edge, like in DC, with Rob F and Impulse not even knowing that he had the track, and they're hearing like their music on this system. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I remember that listserv, and I definitely trolled it along with Dogs on Acid. So.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit too earnest on stuff. I was just very like, you know, I'm Ransom. Like, I'm not gonna troll. And you know, I think I looked at my an archive of Dogs on Acid not too long ago, and like I didn't know who I'm talking with, but people were like, "You fucked this up," and it's just like, you know, like I don't know who I'm talking with, but like I'm sure that I definitely stepped on toes at points. But it's whatever. It's just like scene.
I mean, but I think that also comes in with the scene was really young. I mean, when you think about like when Andy C and Slant were starting this, like they're young adults, like 18, 16, kicking it, you know, respectively, you know, maybe a little bit older, but still like in that range and throwing parties. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and that was the era and the time. And when I look back at the 16, 18, 20 odd year olds that I know now, I go, A, you guys aren't doing shit. But then it's also a little bit of like, oh yeah, I remember talking like that. Mm-hmm. Man, how did I, like, why is my nose straight? I should have been punched in the face far more, like more often.
Yeah. But, you know, we all grow from it. Random story. There was a house in DC over by the Black Cat. It was like on S Street. Mm-hmm. So I think I lived there in 2001, 2002. But it had been passed through, like, there were people that went to American University, and as someone was leaving the school, like, they'd invite a friend to move in. And event, like, REA, who had been involved with Act Your Age, had lived there at one point. When he graduated and moved back north. My friend Errol, who was involved with, like, Tower Record people, Errol moved in. Errol let me know that someone was moving out, so I move in. And he goes, oh, you know, the guy on the lease is this guy, Robbie. You might know him. Turns out, like, a bunch of my friends knew Robbie. Like, you know Robbie. Kailu. Yes. Resonate. He heads up the Resonate stuff. Yeah, so I was roommates with Robbie, and I didn't get along with him. And I posted stuff online about him. And eventually, like, he's like, did you say this about me? I was like, yes. And then, you know, I get a letter saying I had a month to move out. Benco, like, it basically Benco and I were like living there, and we weren't on the lease; we were subletting. But yeah, I definitely would let I would be petty about stuff at times, and you know, it bit me in the ass. But and the thing was, a lot of it was me like harboring anger or jealousy or something. Even though I was the one that was like playing shows and he's like always asking to come out to stuff at that time. But, you know, people learn. I learned to get over myself and like not hold grudges. And then, you know, jump 15, 16 years later, I go to one of his parties at U-Haul and I was like, when Ulterior Motive played, It was like the first time I'd gone out in 2018 because a young kid. And I was going out to tell people that I was moving away, that I was moving to Boston. So I go and Robbie's like, hey, like, good to see you. He's like asking me questions, like if my opinion on like throwing stuff. And then him and the infamous went back to the green room. And Robbie's like, do you want to be a resident? And I was like, this is the worst. Like, I'm here to tell people that I'm leaving in 2 months. And like, you know, I haven't been DJing for a couple of years. And, you know, that may have been the first Resonate party I went to.
Nice.
But yeah, they were looking to expand their roster because they asked me and they asked Freefall to be residents. And I couldn't do it. Like, I would have loved to because those lineups were like, they were booking like really progressive lineups in my head. They weren't doing like the same tours that were coming through. But like, there's so many tours that come through DC, and there's so many different people that are booking stuff. So I don't know. The last few years I was in DC, it wasn't a good barometer for me, like to judge how things were because I wasn't going out. Like I stopped playing shows in 2014, 2015.
Okay.
But yeah, DC's always been getting amazing shows.
We do it as long as we've got the venues to house them. You know, it'll continue to be.
Sometimes the venues don't stand up to the talent that's booked at them, but
yeah, there is that. You know,
there was a time I saw Misanthrope in a
really
basement in Adams Morgan. I think there were 20 people there, but there's a lot of stories. Dara played at a rec center in Wheaton. That was like the first time I actually talked with Dara because I volunteered to drive him back to Union Station. But it was a daytime party. The guy from Roughneck Players Crew booked this rec center and like booked Dara to play at 2 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I didn't know how to drive to Union Station from there at the time. Someone just said take Georgia Avenue all the way. And Dara was like, you know, my train's in an hour. Do you know what you're doing? It's like, yes, I know what I'm doing. Like, let's talk about drum and bass. You run breakbeat science. I love you.
We'll get there eventually.
I didn't have access to a computer, so I couldn't print the map quest. It's like on the spot. Yeah, I'll drive you.
Oh, MapQuest. I haven't thought about that in a hot second.
I couldn't find Buzz for the first. There was a time I tried to go to Buzz. Like I drove from somewhere different than I usually did, and we couldn't find it. And it was in a blizzard.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now we've gone through the DnB listserv. You've now at this point said retired, if you will, and you've moved into Boston. Now at this point, have we done any more production work up until this point?
So the production that came in waves.
Okay.
There was like getting the emu, but not learning how to use it. Like, I think there's a cassette tape at my dad's house that has like the first forays into making tracks and, you know, titles like Transportation. Then I learned how to in 2000 to 2002, 2003, there was a bit of production because I did a couple things with UFO. We did a collab with the Synthetics guys that eventually came out on a compilation like years later. Then there's Marcio, Telemetric. I haven't brought them up at all. Telemetric was like another crew of DJs that had a very big like performance aspect to their sets. It was Marcio was like the producer in the crew, and then they had Hicks, Houston, Hollow Point. So that's this guy Chris Cullen. I talked to him and Hicks still about beer. I think Cullen may have left Telemetric when Houston became a part of it, but eventually Telemetric became just Marcio as his production alias, and he had an album on Black Sun Empire, which there were a couple tracks that featured Hicks or collaborations with Hicks. Then there's a collaboration with an artist at the time known as Emancipation, is Evan, who is now Hybris, who's Vision and Metalheads. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Evan was this kid that would come out to parties. Like, yeah, I've talked to Evan about it. He's like, you used to try to sneak into parties that you were playing at because we were 17 and it was like 18 and up to get in. But he would come in and like give CDs, like his Emancipation tracks, and then he went on to form a trio with like eventually a guy that was my roommate, my friend Brian Johns, who had gone by Signal and now he goes by Hot Wave. They started a duo that became a trio called Robot Death Squad. They've been on Moving Shadow. So they were like the last release ever on Moving Shadow. It was a split EP. I forget who the other artist was. But Marcio Telemetric, he started working with Josh Impulse when Synthetics kind of split. They worked as Corrupt Souls. They signed to Moving Shadow. Marcio and I worked on a few things together. We had one track that came together really quick. Moving Shadow picked it up, but then Marcio and Josh decided it was going to be a Corrupt Souls track. There was stuff with that where I wasn't going to get any credit on it, even though like Marcio and I worked on the track. It was like all my samples. Like I could tell you what sample CD sounds came from. They were like the track's called Broadcast. Like the intro, we sampled WTOP, like news radio, for the intro, and did this like weird little reverse swirl, you know, to start the track off. Like there's stuff like that I can tell you about the track because I was there and I helped with that track. But experience with that and some other stuff, giving Marcio samples because I wanted to work on. I found like a hard drive that had old projects. There were like 4 things Marcio and I had started, but I'd give him some samples and then he used one of them like real quick when he knew that I don't even know if he knew that I wanted to use it, but like I said, I want to use this on the next track. And then 2 days later, I get a thing that's like, hey, check out the track I made with the vocal that you sent me. And then, you know, it gets signed to Circle Recordings, like the Circle DJ management from Philadelphia. Have you heard about Kevin Gimbel and the Circle roster?
No, do tell.
That was like the main North American roster for booking UK DJs. They were based out of Philadelphia. When Diesel Boy moved to Philadelphia, him and Kevin Gimbel linked up to do the platinum events at Josh Wink's club called Fluid. And basically like some of the biggest names from the UK were on Circle. They played platinum on a Thursday, and then their tours went wherever. They came to DC, they went to New York, they went to Boston, they went out west. But yeah, they started like Chaos and Carl K and Jay Kennedy were involved with Circle in a capacity, and Kevin Gimbel wanted to start a record label with it. And I think the Corrupt Souls single on it was like the second or third thing on it. But yeah, Marcio was like, here, check this out. Like this amazing track that I made with the vocal that you found from some obscure place that no one else is going to know initially. But I don't know. I took it to heart. I was dealing. The other thing is like mental health is a big thing. Like stress and depression and all that like comes in waves. And like that happened at a time. And it was basically like I lost motivation for production. I became a bit of a hermit, even though I was going to parties like every week. I was still playing out a decent amount, but it was a little bit of a setback, and I fell into playing online video games really hard for like 4 years. So production, check out my 75 Paladin versus like, here's my half-assed dub plate. It wasn't WoW, even though WoW took a lot of people out. It wasn't WoW.
I was just about to say, what was it?
Final Fantasy 11.
Yes.
Super Japanese, grindy. But you could play any class with your character. But yeah, WoW did kill. WoW took a lot of people out of the DC scene for a while. Like there's a big core group of guys that used to DJ a lot that kind of disappeared for a couple years.
In between WoW and Final Fantasy, both like just wiped out chunks of the scene.
I mean, there's rumors of people like big level producers that disappeared for a while because of WoW. I don't know. I don't want to like put the names out there, but like people whose music I loved.
we can just smile on that one.
Yeah. They're doing
Alright.
well now.
All right. So now you've had a bit of a setback. No, you've got your game on. How did you claw yourself away from the machine? And where did you end up going from there?
So I had a grandparent. My grandfather passed away on my dad's side. And he had left inheritance to my dad and my uncles and aunt. And a year after that, my dad was like, I lived with my dad for 4 years. That was the other thing. I think from like 2002 to 2006 or 7, I was living with my dad. It was basically like having a roommate that was 25 years older than me, though. It was, my parents split when I was in high school, and my dad and I were not on good terms when that happened. And eventually it patched up, but it's still kind of weird. You know, here I'm like 44. It's still kind of weird. But I live, like, he was like, yeah, you can move in and live with me for a bit. And it became like 4 years. He was like, I'm going to give you some money. Use it to buy property. So there's no way I could have, I mean, you see the headlines, like, you know, I bought a house and paid it off like in 2 years. And, you know, this comments, you know, that you see like the memes was like, they got money from their parents. I got money from my parent and bought a condo in Greenbelt. And I had Brian Signal, the robot death squad guy. Yeah. I had gotten him a job. I was working at NIH as a contractor, the National Institutes of Health, like federal government IT stuff. And I had gotten Brian a job there a year before, and he lived a mile away from where we worked. But I lived, you know, 15 miles away. When I told him I was buying a place, he's like, I'll be your roommate. So it was like, I think 2007 that I got the condo. It was 2-bedroom, 2-bath. He had his studio set up in his room. He was putting out, he was writing a lot of music. He was connected with a lot. He's talking with a lot of people. And this is when dubstep started to become, I mean, Joe Nice in Baltimore really helped dubstep, like, in this area, like, it globally as well. But, you know, because he's from the area, like, he's gonna play, like, you know, a random Sunday show. And so I was involved with Expansion Broadcast by this time, and so that's Ill Effect and Ricky Ricardo, Shade. It's like a whole bunch of people. Brian moved in with me. He was like, oh, you might like this dubstep stuff. And at first it was a little like, you're like, oh, dubstep. Like, it sounds like the breakdown of a digital track. That's what dubstep sounded like to me. Like, it was like the space of a digital or spirit track. That's what dubstep sounded like to me. Because you hear people like, oh, it sounds like Wales and all this other stuff. But I started listening to Rinse FM. Brian had given me this mix. It was built for Boundaries? It was the DJ was Quiet Storm. It was Search and Destroy and Quiet Storm. Quiet Storm's now Caspa. Like, if you followed dubstep at all, it was 140 breakbeat dubstep, like this hybrid of stuff. That's where I learned about Rezo. I love Rezo. Rezo, I love you. You make amazing. Got into Rinse. I was listening to Distance like weekly. He would do new talent for the first hour of his shows. Scream, the Stella sessions. So, like, sometimes Benga would be on it. Youngsta, I didn't get into Youngsta until a little bit later. Like, I don't know if it didn't register with me. But yeah, like Distance, like Traffic. If you're like, oh, dubstep's meh. Distance, Traffic, look it up. I'm not a metal guy, but he was big on metal riffs, and that track just like has hooks. And I was still DJing, and I would play a couple dubstep tracks at the end of my sets. And people from Expansion Broadcast were expanding to playing dubstep. Brian was like, why don't you try writing some dubstep? So I wrote like 3 or 4 dubstep tracks. 3 of them got played on Distance's show. Like in his new talent thing.
Nice.
I did not keep up with writing dubstep. I got like the itch for drum and bass back, but I also was dabbling in like electro house, and stuff like that. But like electro house was more like making tracks that were named as like jokes to friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look up Harry Ransom Flexotron, it's a song about a friend of mine who started weightlifting and became like super. So we started calling him Flexotron. So I make a track that's like, "What's up, Flexotron?" Like, you know, that's
awesome.
Like, the ethos of a lot of my music is like, you know, teasing friends, inside jokes. But yeah, dubstep got me back into production.
Nice.
Yeah.
So dialing back, talk more about Expansion Broadcast, because that crew was also pretty influential within the area. So,
so initially, two webcasts that were happening regularly. There was also the guy Ian, Roughneck Players Crew guy. He was doing some sort of. I remember playing like at his house a few times, but Jackson ODJ, Dirtbox Radio.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he lived like 2 miles from me when I was in Greenbelt. And I don't even know how many times I played Dirtbox. And then Expansion Broadcast, which started, I don't know, within a year of Dirtbox. Expansion Broadcast was Eric Masiello, Ill-Effects. I was about to say Ill Truth because I'm so into Ill Truth music right now. It's like, your names are too similar to my friend's name. But yeah, Eric Ill-Effect, like, he was part of this group of Baltimore, like, UMBC guys that had a college radio show, and they all graduate and move to DC because DC was the hotbed for, I don't want to say it's a hotbed for drum and bass, but there were like a lot of job opportunities here too. Like I don't think many people move to DC because they're like, oh, drum and bass scene, like, you know, it's transient.
Yeah.
I grew up in the area. I'm like of the people that grew up in the DC area. But you meet all the transient people as you get older. So those guys all moved down. They had me play the show. I played semi-regularly, and eventually Eric was like, "Do you want to be a part of the crew?" And at this point, most of my friends, like from college, had moved away from the area. Like Benko, who was my main DJ partner from Step Syndicate, like we used to tag team back to back, tons. He moved to Arizona. He moved to Phoenix. We had a couple other friends like from that group that moved away, like, you know, academic opportunities, job opportunities. Matt, I can't remember. I think Matt Nordstrom was around for a bit, but like he took a job with Deep Dish and like became very prolific as a studio engineer. We wrote tracks together. Like we have stuff like from 2002, 2003. But yeah, Expansion Broadcast became like my new core group of friends. It just, you know, it was Friday. It was like a Friday hangout. Go play the show. Like the thing is, the show would rotate whose house it would be done from. Mm-hmm. But it was often done at Eric's. He lived over near Catholic University in DC, and that became like the pregame before going to Buzz. And so you just, you know, hang out there so much that, you know, you become part of the group. And yeah, Expansion Broadcast was fun. Eric stopped it. Like I think everyone kind of lost steam eventually. Mm-hmm. Like Dirtbox is still going. Like
I think Dirtbox even has a Twitch channel now. I need to run that down, but
I feel like they're at like 17 or 18 years now.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about Expansion was Expansion's website was slick. I mean, the whole operation was to a higher level at the time, and the music that was also being played on there was.
Yeah, that's Eric's thing. Like, I don't know much about design, mm-hmm. but I feel like that's like the back end.
But that goes back into that whole notion of DC and the design, the futurism, like it all being tied in. Like everyone had their brand, everyone has a thing, and it carries forth, you know, throughout the different like waves of drum and bass DJs that come through the area.
Yeah. With Expansion Broadcast and like your time in the area, did you ever get to play at Strangeland Records?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you know about Strangeland Records?
I didn't.
It was in Annandale.
Uh-huh.
And it was like industrial and dance music.
Nice.
And that was the best spot to get dubstep records. And they had a real like dubstep, drum and bass, and then there was like industrial stuff around that area. Joey Nicola, he's artist, like Resolute, IR Resolute. He did the branding for me. He was involved with like design of the branding for that shop. He was like, he worked the register at. He's like another Tower Records person. Awesome artist. He does a lot of Destiny stuff now, like the video game, like art based on that. But the record shop, they started hosting crew takeovers. And they would set up DJ equipment in the store, and it was BYOB.
Awesome.
Yeah. So crews were like a big thing in DC. Like we've been involved in so many crews. The crews also had sub crews and secret crews, and then there were like people from one crew and another crew that had like these joint crews. Like I had stuff with friends, like we were called We Crush You, but it was like very emo-y, like write about your feelings on LiveJournal, but we also we could mix records. An offshoot of the whole Expansion Broadcasting and that BYOB was the FBC.
The FBC, okay.
Fancy Beer Crew.
Ooh, so now we finally get into beer.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Do carry forth.
Well, it started with a styrofoam cooler and a thick black marker, and we wrote FBC on it, and it was stocked full of like IPA that, like, you know, this is like 2006 2007 when I had craft beer, and like, you know, I would go to stuff like the Brick Skeller with like one of my old college roommates, and would try stuff, but like that's when there was a lot more people getting into craft beer, and so we had this whole FBC thing, and like hanging out with Dark Kinetics and Hotoy. They were married. They lived Chantilly. They were part of Expansion Broadcast.
Okay.
Both DJs. They were like FBC people, and just, I don't know. It just became this whole thing. It was fun. It was like another, you know, component of hanging out. I remember Mike's bachelor party, going to Victory Brewing, up and like doing a road trip to Pennsylvania to go to Victory, staying overnight. Yeah, just party.
Awesome.
Party well.
You know, if you're gonna party, might as well party with quality product, you know.
Yes.
I mean, that's partly why I got into brewing, was just because I couldn't find the beer I wanted here. So I was like, screw it, I'll make it myself.
Just your current brew right now, like, I don't, like, are you able to buy that type of beer in the States? Like,
I can buy it in Maryland, I can buy it in Boston, and I can buy it in Ohio. So I can go to my uncle's house in Boston and get it. So I'm, for everyone in chat, I'm brewing right now a English Dark Mild, which is kind of like a Bellhaven Black. So for most of the country, you can get the Bellhaven. Oh, crap, what is it? It's like their Scotch Ale. And there's another Bellhaven that you can get. Both are okay, but they usually come in a bottle. The Bellhaven Black comes in, it looks like a Guinness can. It's got a nitro pop in it. And it is low on alcohol, so it's like probably in about like the 3-4 range. It's a session beer. But it is all, I mean, it's like as smooth as milk. And it's almost like a dessert almost when you drink it, but you can have like, 10 of them and still go home to the missus and not be sloppy. So it's kind of it's a great session ale. And when I found out I couldn't get them in Virginia, it just drove me berserk. And I came home from Scotland, and both my wife and I were absolutely heartbroken that we couldn't get good beer anymore. And so we're like, well, screw it. And a friend of mine was getting rid of his brew kit, his entire setup. It was like $500 worth of like beer making supplies. And he's like, you know what? If you just keep supplying me with whatever you're making, you can have it for free. And so I now have this ridiculous set of glass carboys and everything under the sun to make it. But the thing that I was talking about earlier that makes it the cat's pajamas is I've got an app that will give me the exact temperature and gravity of my beer at the time. It's like right over here on the other side of the wall. But it's so just ridiculously nerdy as it now tries to pick it up. Oh, too many signals. Oh well.
I'll have to put you in touch with Cullen because he's brewing as well. He lives like, where are you in Virginia?
Let's see. I'm now over in the west side of Alexandria.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's in Fairfax, but he brews at home. He's doing more like IPAs and like Belgian stuff.
Oh, nice.
He bought his own canning system.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I trade beer. My first trade with Cullen was a 4-pack of Trillium. Or no, I think I sent him 6 different Trillium because that's what a lot of people want from my areas: Trillium and Treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he had Trillium yet, and I had posted a once list for records a few months ago, and I get this message. He goes, "I have some of those records. Do you want to send me some beer? I know you've been trading with Hicks." Hicks and I we decided to do a couple test trades.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, sure. So like I got like an Alex Reese tune on Metalheads. I can't
nice.
I'll check my Discogs. I got like 4 or 5 records. I'm just like, oh my God. And he got, 6 like really good beers out of it.
That's awesome.
So now I trade with him and Hicks. Like they live near each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send them 8 beers, like pairs of beers, mm-hmm. but then I get 8 different ones from them.
Ooh.
Yeah. I have to say I really enjoy Other Half, which opened a brewery in DC. Like they're from Brooklyn,
mm-hmm.
but they have a brewery in DC now. And then not far from DC Brow, I don't think. And where the Okie Street warehouse is tied to drum and bass.
Nice.
And then Aslan. They send me a lot of Aslan stuff. And then occasionally Adroit Theory, who Diesel Boy occasionally does collaborations with. Design and brewing.
I love that.
Yeah. I try to tell Freefall that they need to do a Belgian quadrupel and make it 11.7%. And because the Winston's Amen record, the catalog number is 117.
Nice.
Which is also one of DJ Trace's record labels. 117. It's not what happens when you use a triplet when producing. It's the catalog number for the Amen.
There you go.
Yeah.
I learned something new today.
Yeah. But yeah. Tripping Animals. Yeah, they've sent me Cullen has sent me some of that Tripping Animals stuff. Like really cool, like fruited sours.
Fun.
So yeah, I love beer, but I'm also like I told you before, I was like, I'm treating myself to a beer tonight because I'm trying not to drink Sunday through Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I get to have like 1 beer each usually.
Nice.
I had to see a nutritionist. Yeah. Stuff that happens during a pandemic,
Those things.
Getting chubbers.
Nah, my all my old high school buddies seemingly joined forces and started a brewery in my hometown. So Little Fish Brewing in Athens, Ohio is like literally my house is on a hill. Mm-hmm. So I get on a bike and I can just ride down to this brewery now that's at the bottom of this hill. It's amazing because then you get there, you session, you have a great time. There's lots of sours, lots of amazingly delicious beers, right? But then I got to push that bike back up that damn hill.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, all right. So, like, we've made it into the expansion broadcast.
Mm.
We've made it into beer. Boston, and what has Boston given you now? Now that you've finally gotten out of the Beltway.
So yeah, this is the first time I've lived outside of the Washington D.C. area.
Congratulations, by the way.
I lived in a 20-mile radius my entire life.
Wow.
Prince George's County, D.C., back to PG County, and then Montgomery County. My wife's from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So we met in D.C. She's working at a nonprofit. She eventually worked for the Peace Corps at their headquarters. I was working at University of Maryland when we met. Finished a master's degree. That's partly why my DJing stopped, is like my master's got a little too intense. And then a month after getting my degree, found out we were having our first kid. So then it's become like the whole nesting. Like we had bought a house in Silver Spring like in 2013. Getting that ready. Like I had my studio in the basement. I had my turntable set up. Like just pan, so not that many people were watching, but my record collection. The story with that too. The cases are custom. Brian Arsenal, who was a DC drum and bass, used to tag team with Jesse Titsworth a lot. Tits and Ars. His dad was a woodworker, built custom cabinets for a lot of us. The cabinet behind me was Titsworth's.
Wow.
And he sold a condo and needed to get it out of the condo and like gave it to me for $50. But yeah, Boston. My wife's from up here for years. She was like, "How would you feel about moving to Boston? How would you feel about moving to Boston? What do you think about moving to Boston? It'd be nice to be near my parents and like my nieces and nephews that live up there." And my family started to move away from the DC area, and I thought it would be important for my daughter to have a chance to like have cousins. Like my family's great, but they moved 3 hours away.
Nice.
And we weren't seeing them that often. And I was getting a little stagnant in my job at University of Maryland. I wasn't progressing like I had hoped. And yeah, we started looking at opportunities. I sent my resume. I knew that I wanted to work at university because I had 10 years at University of Maryland. I knew the culture, or the culture there. Mm-hmm. I liked that type of environment. I liked the work I was doing. I liked the type of people I was working with. I liked that I didn't have to wear, I didn't have a uniform or, something corporate that you had to wear. So I also wasn't very confident in what I could find. And I was in counseling, mostly talking about career stuff. And the guy was like, if you want to move up at University of Maryland, you need to leave. Like that's the best way to like progress here, is to leave and come back. I was like, really? And he was like, and you're going to have a tough time finding something. And I was like, all right, whatever. So I started applying for jobs. And 3 months later, I was living here.
Wow.
There's a university I applied at. I had sent 4 resumes for 4 different positions. I got in-person interviews for 3 of those positions. Mm-hmm. Referrals for further, be like, one was like a man, not a manager, but like a team lead. And they're like, yeah, you're not ready for a team lead, but we want you. I ended up not working for that school, but like just what I was seeing opportunity wise, I was like, so maybe this is going to be a good move. And I ended up landing a job, moved up in the late February 2019, lived with my in-laws for a year. Also 2 days after I got the job offer, my wife, we found out we were having a second kid. So it's like job and just be like, so in 7 months, I'm going to have to go on parental leave. Like, I see that you have excellent parental leave benefits.
I'm going to have to use them.
Yeah. So moved up here. We bought a house in the city. We're in. It's a little bit different up here. It's funny. Boston reminds me a little bit of Baltimore, a little bit of San Francisco. It's got like stuff that reminds me of other places. Mm-hmm. But we live in a neighborhood called Roslindale. Uh-huh. So it's within the city limits, but it's a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But I can get really good tacos like a 15-minute walk away.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. Not my favorite tacos, but good. the bagel place that I found, and so there's a guy in the chat right now named Odubs. He's a colleague of mine from work. Like,
nice.
He's so Okella saw my lunch bag and was like, I had done like a tag of like my daughter's name, and he was like, "Do you write?" I was like, "Not really. I just dabble with it." I was like, "But you actually recognized that I did something not normal, but it looked cool to you." And then that became like, "So what kind of music do you listen to?" And I said he knew what drum and bass was. He knew what like Elements is the big weekly up here. It's like been running for 21 or 22 years. Like I wouldn't say Okella, I wouldn't say you're in the scene, but you know of it. You've been to stuff, and so I don't know. I like my colleagues. Sometimes the work is a bit stressful. I think because I get in my own head about where I'm working. But yeah, moved up here, got a house. Now this is probably like my third basement studio. But eventually we're gonna finish it. I mean, you can see like the hole in the ceiling.
I just assumed it was from Ruckus Bass.
Yeah, that makes the stuff fall out. Actually, I usually use stuff in my headphones. I'm trying to use my like I bought new like I sold a lot of studio gear when we moved from Maryland. Sold like my DJ mixer. Like I had a big Pioneer mixer, but I wasn't DJing that much. Pandemic and Twitch streams has definitely scratched the itch to get back into DJing.
So are you, because you said you liked Serato, are you going to get like a controller, or are you going to go like, what you going to do?
I'm going to start. So Serato is weird for me. I have very bad Serato habits.
Okay. How so?
I got into internal mode.
Really?
You know what internal mode is?
Oh, I've got Serato launched right over here. Yes.
Yeah, I got into internal mode. I can mix visually.
Huh.
Not using sync, like actually adjusting pitch, but because of how I produce music and looking at waveforms, it made Serato very easy for me to visually like. I know how to use the key commands for internal mode. I haven't used it in like 4 years, but I could do it right now. Like if you said I need a DJ mix in an hour, I could probably have something like together and mixed pretty well.
Nice.
Because I remember like it's just burned in. So I put together a scrap computer from work. Like there's a PC, it's got like a like 3 terabytes, like they got solid state for the programs and like a hard drive for the music. I've spent the past week getting FLAC, WAVE, MP3, like whatever formats I have of stuff, because I try to digitally back up what I have record wise. I actually prefer to buy digital backups if I can find them rather than rip, because I've done rips and then I hear like a weird ground hum or something in it.
You hear all the things in your records.
Yeah, but then again, it's my records. Like, that pop is because I left it at someone's house, or it's something silly like that. But I have a couple of cheap like little Akai drum pads, the LPD 8. It's got 8 pads, 8 knobs. I have 2 of them now, so I'm just gonna make my own controller to start.
Nice.
But oh yeah, I've looked at those.
I got this for my daughter, and then I promptly started using it on airplane travel. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
I played a mix off of Tractor on the iPad once.
Oh wow!
In U-Haul, just because I was like, I wanted to see if I could do it.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah. So I'm gonna hobble together like my little makeshift MIDI controller, internal mode. See if I get myself into mixing. When it's safe for me to travel, I'm actually coming down to DC. I'm gonna drive down, because going back to Todd from like almost 2 hours ago, he lives in, where's the Delmarva neighborhood? Is that Alexandria or Arlington?
You mean Del Rey?
Del Rey, yeah. Where's
that's just it's just outside of Old Town. So yeah,
Okay.
Alexander.
So he and his partner live there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Todd has one turntable. I have one turntable. He's like, I'm never going to mix. And I usually lose stuff whenever I move. So come down here, take the turntable. Oh, and there's 4 crates of records you can take. Keep the records you want. Whatever you sell, give me half the money. So
We got drum and bass there?
it's all drum and bass.
Then I'm going to come over and take whatever you don't.
That's the plan. Is I gotta collect this stuff. The other thing is I'm gonna do this like whole bootlegger road trip. My wife has already been like, it's you can do this trip on your own. Like I'll have the kids, you know. She'll be, you know, her parents live 2 miles away. Like
nice.
Her youngest sister and their 2 little girls live like 2 miles in another direction. Like we move, we have family around us.
Nice.
So I'm gonna do this whole bootlegger trip where I'll probably buy a case or 2 of Trillium. Like I'll probably get in touch with a couple people and take pre-orders, get some stuff from Trillium. Then on the way south, I'll probably take a drive that's a little like out of the way and stop at this place called Treehouse, which is really good. That like they're like my number 2 for beer, and it's like what a lot of people I know down in the DC area ask me for.
Okay.
And then there's a brewery outside of New York City. It's like Hudson Valley Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of cool things about, but a lot of breweries you can ship stuff now. But I've only found one brewery that's shipping into Massachusetts. And it's not it's one from North Carolina. But yeah, so I have this whole idea in my head that I'm going to pick up all this beer and like trade with people. This is the first time I bring up the name Jacob Locks. You know, yeah. Like we go super, super way back. He's like one of my favorite people to run into at parties.
Nice.
He and his wife just had a baby a couple months ago, but he and his twin brother are super into beer. He's super into drum and bass. It's like I told him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna let you know when I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give you some beer, but like there's a few people that I want to contact beforehand and be like, okay, either pay me for it or we'll trade beers for it, and then I'll drive with all the records back, and then maybe I'll stop at this place in New York, this Hudson Valley Brewing. But you know, with I don't know, who knows, like the car will break down or something, like everything will melt in the back, or like, you know, fountains of beer spraying out, you know, who knows. But yeah, I just have this like whole thing built up in my head, like this road trip. The other thing that I miss a lot about the DC area, Peruvian chicken.
You know what? Every time I think about leaving, it's the food and the diversity that keeps me here.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, the music scene's amazing. Don't get me wrong, but there are amazing music scenes everywhere. I've now been here long enough. I've kind of got this weird DC pride thing. Like there was a brief second where I thought like I might move up to New England, but that's a whole nother bag of story. And the first thought was I had this like knee-jerk reaction, but then I can't live in the Beltway anymore, and that really hurt me. And then I was like, but what am I going to do for vegetarian food? Damn it.
Yeah, and because like DC, you've got like the big Ethiopian population, and you got like Jose Andres. Like, does he still have a vegetarian?
Oh yeah, he's still got a whole setup.
Ran into him at a farmer's market once in Bethesda, and my wife was like, whatever he buys, just buy. He was just buying like these gorgeous tomatoes. I don't even like tomatoes, but like he's buying crates of tomatoes from this one stand, and she's like, buy those tomatoes. So yeah, for me, it's the Peruvian chicken, because we lived in Silver Spring's huge, and where I lived, Eric from Expansion Broadcast lived like a mile north of us. Him and his wife Hyun, and there was still like hang out. Like my going away was pretty much hanging out with like him and Brian, Hot Wave, Signal, and like a couple other friends. It's the Peruvian chicken in Wheaton that I miss. Like, but you can get it in Virginia as well. Like El Pollo Rico is like my favorite of the Peruvian chicken, and then this place called Sardi's. Wheaton had really, really good Thai food, there were like 5 different Thai restaurants, and each one was like specialized in something different. There's an amazing ramen shop in Wheaton. Boston has amazing ramen. That's like Japanese food in Boston is like just I'm not upset about my Japanese options up here, but the Peruvian chicken, like just to have like $5 quarter chicken with like those like greasy like steak cut fries and like coleslaw.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, there's other stuff I miss about DC, like the people.
Oh, you know.
Oh, and the Nationals go and win the World Series like the year I move away.
Well, you know, it had to happen eventually.
Yeah. And then like the one buddy of mine that I used to go to games with often, his work had sent him to Venezuela or Argentina or something for like a month. So he missed like all of it. It's like, of course, like the year that our baseball team, I mean, I'm not even a diehard baseball person, but like it's fun to go to a Nationals game. Granted, it's like also where the Buzz venue used to be, like right there. And it's like, oh,
yeah. It's actually whenever I'm leaving is when I'm reminded that that's where, you know, Buzz and Nations like reside. Its grave was, but it's always when I pass the McDonald's, I'm just like, oh man.
Never went in that McDonald's. As much as I love McGriddles, never went in that McDonald's.
It's funny. I'm working. I do woodcut prints, and I'm working on one from Nations when they'd open up the Bombay doors, and you'd have that foam pit, that weird like wooden back fencing, and then the Capitol in the background. You know, and it's like I just have this like vague memory, and yeah, I say vague only because I think I could say I partook in the 90s. So you know, my memory is a little phasey of it, but like that Capitol in like framed in that doorway has always been like just kind of burned into my memory.
Yeah. I know there's certain things I never tried, but Benko, there was a time him and one of his high school friends, we were at Buzz and they did acid. And Dara was the headliner. And it was when the front room had like, this was like in the 90s, I think. The front room had a raised wooden dance floor for a period of time. And Ben is just like, it's Planet Drum and Bass. And Dara's the president. It's just like, crap.
They had that like raised DJ booth too there in the front.
Yeah. Another drug story. This one directly me. I found the flyer yesterday. There was a party that Ben and I opened up at the Edge. I think M3 may have thrown it, but Digital and Spirit headlined it. It's like 2001. So at that point, I was actually cutting dub plates. I was getting stuff from the Funk Tech guys, the Synthetics guys. There was a couple other people that were like giving me tunes, like, and saying, you can cut this. Like, you're the person that's like representing our sound, like in the DC area. Like,
oh wow,
you can play this stuff because like you're there, and like we want people to hear this stuff. Abstract let me cut a track. It was called Tribute, and it's just like, it was like old school rave stabs. Just it was exactly like the Spirit, Digital and Spirit sound at that time. So we played it, like super, there weren't that many people there yet, and then I think we played 10 to 11, and you see the lineup, and it's like Digital and Spirit, 4 a.m. And I look at Ben, and I was like, I haven't done anything to stay up like in 4 years, but I think we need to split a pill. So we split E. It wasn't anything, it kept us awake. We made it through the set, and I was so loved up about the set that I went up in the booth to get my records. I was like, hi, Spirit, I love you. You're great. This was an amazing set. Here, have this dub plate by this artist you've never heard of. It sounds exactly like you. Jump a couple years. Did you know that Spirit lived in the DC area for a few years?
No.
Yeah. His RIP, his now widow, was from Northern Virginia.
Oh, really?
And so they were living in Northern Virginia, and he used to come out to 5 at the upfront parties. And it's just like, you're Spirit. And then, the next, hey, it's Spirit. Hey, Duncan, how are you doing? Like, think his name was Duncan. Or am I getting no? I know Trace's Duncan. I think Spirit's name was Duncan as well. But yeah, Spirit would come out. Like he would go to a couple shows every once. I think more during the week. Like he may have been traveling on the weekends. I don't think he ever. He never brought up me giving him the but like I forgot about that story for so long, and then I'm like, someone asked about like stuff, and it, these stories start coming back, and it's like, I don't want to say rolling my face, but I was, it's 5 a.m. I'm like, here's a $40 record that I played like 3 times, and I thought that this person had to have it. Like, that's how MDMA works on your brain, I guess. But yeah, check out the Woofer.
So here's a question: like, who is cutting your dubs in the DC area, or was it from the DC area?
They weren't from the DC area. There were 2 places I mainly cut through.
Okay.
One was Aardvark. There's the guy who was based out of Denver. That's where Diesel Boy cut.
Yeah.
Or that's where he mostly was cutting, like way back then. So Damien would sometimes send a CD or have a DAT there, and he like, if it was something of his, something that he was going to be putting out, like one of his labels, he would say, contact the guy at Aardvark, say that Damien said you had permission to cut this, and add it to your order. So I was getting a lot of stuff I was playing a lot of stuff by Peter Kay. I was playing a lot of, like, Hive was giving me a lot of stuff. Yeah, like, just, it was cool. Like, I still have some stuff that never came out.
Nice.
And when I get back to like mixing, I'll probably do a mix of like, the stuff that never came out. I've got a Kiko track, like Kiko was from DC. I got a Kiko track that was supposed to come out that never did. It's like, it's so good. Like, he made such like great, like techie vibey tracks. But there's Aardvark that I cut through, and then there was Turnstile in Los Angeles. I think Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch.
So I left out the whole, like, I used to go to California a lot to play. It was totally, 6 or 7 times I paid myself to go. But you made enough playing gigs. Like, I'd go to San Francisco and I'd play Juju's Night like almost every time I went. I played 1015 Folsom, which is like a big super club, but they would do drum and bass in the basement. This guy Matt Cohen, he had like Elite Records. He would book the basement, so I played the basement a few times. I played with Stock at Skynet a few times. Like, they gave me like test presses at some point. But yeah, there was a point where I met people because of the people in San Francisco and their booking agent. Met people from Los Angeles. I got flown out to play a rave called Drum and Basics. I've seen that you talk with Billy Lane. I don't think I ever met Billy Lane, but there's a flyer that we're both on from like 2001.
Nice.
It was these guys, Origin. He's still around. Ryan Origin. He had stuff on Subtitles not too long ago. Don was like the main guy for Drum and Basics, and Don ties into all this as well because he got Benko into hairstyling, and they're both like Vidal Sassoon trained stylists, like that train other people now. Like,
wow.
If you look at their social media, they have tens of thousands of followers because of their scissor techniques. But yeah, played in Los Angeles, and there was this guy Benji and I talk. There's this really random interview that he did with me for a zine that he used to do. Benji had stuff on Black Sun Empire, and he had one of his big tracks was something that Rhyme Time put out. Like Rhyme Time had 1210, and he had a label called Spawn. Benji wrote a track that was like a Pac-Man track, and it was originally called 2 Credits Equal 1 Play. And I love video games, and the title spoke to me. Benji gave me tons of dubs. I think I even named some of Benji's tracks. Benji and I never met in person. Like, we've talked on the phone, we've chatted online for years, but he was involved with Turnstile at some point. And I think Benji like rode the line between techie stuff because like Ed UFO and all them loved his techie stuff, and he also did a lot of like Raga stuff. I can't remember if he did the Raga stuff as Benji.
I think he did actually, because I think I own a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, he's a graphic designer and illustrator. He worked for a clothing line called the Hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
He was like their senior designer for a while. He left. But yeah, Benji's cool.
Wow, right on.
I don't know. That's a lot of it. It was like that guy was cool. That girl was cool. Like, you know, that's what it was all about. Going back to your comment about the diversity of the DC area,
mm-hmm.
I was actually like, this whole chat is so nebulous and like all over the place. One thing I wanted to point out about DC and the drum and bass scene, and it goes all the way back to Andy and Slant. DC has had and still has, I think, one of the most diverse music scenes, like whether it's race, gender, sexuality, like just the whole spectrum is pretty much represented in the drum and bass scene. Like, sure, there's times where it's skewed more like straight white guy,
mm-hmm.
but there were like a lot of Asian kids that were into drum and bass. There were a lot of like black kids who were in drum and bass. It just there were a lot of women that were playing drum and bass. Like, even like there's people that are forgotten about. Like my friend Molly,
mm-hmm.
she played at one of my favorite drum and bass events ever. There was this thing called Kindred. It was in the warehouse, Lamont Street warehouse that Andy brought up in his interview. It's off of Georgia Avenue. It's now like, you know, fancy condos or whatever. Also, the rumor I heard about Lamont Street warehouse, it was a Smithsonian warehouse. And the top floors, they were being used for parties. But yeah, there was a party in like November of 96 called Kindred. It was like all US people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Molly played at that. She was involved. It was like Molly, Juhi, my friend Anna Salajaga, who we did a radio, like we were part of a radio show at University of Maryland together for several years. Yeah, there's just like a lot of different people were involved. Yeah, I think that DC had a lot of diversity.
It still does.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, I think it's because of the transient nature, and it's also with that whole transient nature of it is what keeps the fresh blood coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, new people coming in, old heads coming out. You know, it works that way.
When I started to get out of it, though, I think one of my criticisms and concerns was that it was aging out. Like, but part of it, like I wasn't, you know, I was in my late 30s,
mm-hmm.
mid to late 30s, where I was still DJing, like starting to stop. And so I didn't know the kids that were like 18, 19, 20 so much. They were there, but I don't know if there were big groups of them coming out. So I don't know how well it's passed down to like younger generations. I do feel like there was a period of time where it was just old heads.
There definitely was an old head time, and I tend to equate that along the same time with like right before dubstep. And there was this brief moment of like I used to call it the drum and bass recession, where it was just like you couldn't find a drum and bass party to save your life. And then it all
upfront ending.
Yep.
And then 3D starting. Like
yep.
there's that period of time between those two production.
In 3D, I often equate with the drum and bass and dubstep like rise, and because like all of a sudden like dubstep became popular and started to rise old boats. You saw old heads come back out again, and you got this new influx of kids that were coming to parties, and Dom and 3D dominated, you know, and brought it all together again. And I'm very curious, like, who's going to rise out of the pot when this whole pandemic thing's over? You know, when we can all get back together, like, who's going to...
What are the venues going to be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've lost so many. We've lost, you know, U-Haul. We've lost 18th Street Lounge. You know, it'll be curious. I don't know how many of the warehouses even, you know, are still under our control.
Yeah, I think the last warehouses the last warehouse I remember in DC was that one on New York Avenue,
mm-hmm.
Over by Union Station, like forward 88 Music. They did a lot of stuff there for a while, but I feel like they got the venue. I feel that they got greedy and they started booking events outside the dance music sphere, and they didn't know the dynamics of the different types of crowds that were starting to show up. I feel like there was a shooting that like happened at like outside of an event, and that shut down that venue. I did get booked to play a drum. I got booked to DJ at a BDSM night there once, which was weird because the people. What was John Tabb's thing on Thursday nights? So the Nation, Alias.
Yes.
Did you ever get to play Alias?
I didn't get to play Alias, but I knew the night.
So Alias happened at the same time the Goth Night happened in the main club at Nation. So you had to like come in for the Industrial Goth Night and then go up to Alias. And I think it was Bound that booked me. But there were people involved with like I was never in that scene. I was aware of it, but they booked me. I was like, are you really? You want me to play at a Bound event? And they're like, yeah, like we remember you from playing Buzz and Alias. I was like, oh, so okay. Like they just name dropped like the credentials, and they're going to pay a decent rate. But they also didn't say I had to play drum and bass. And at that point, I had already started to diversify. So I'm playing like a BDSM night. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to pretend that I'm playing at like Berkheim in Berlin. This is going to be like a seedy Berlin techno party. And I'm just going to play like 34-4. And, but then they booked, see, that's the other, I didn't even get into it. There's a lot of people I didn't know in the area through the year. Like I know names, like there's names I can drop that I don't know if I ever had a conversation with the people. Like there's a lot of people from Virginia, and that BDSM night, I think there was the guy like Controversy DTL. Is that his name? I think he and some of his friends got booked to play it as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
They definitely played drum and bass, and people were definitely getting flogged to like 180 BPM music. The other thing is, I didn't know what I was seeing at times. Like nothing. That's the other thing is it wasn't as scandalous as you had it built up. Like, do you remember going to your first rave and like the mental hurdle that you may have had to go to your first rave? I definitely had family that had in my head that like if I was going to go to a rave, it was going to be like, jumping over syringes and like, silver platters of powdered drugs. Like, and that's the furthest thing from what I saw. The first time, only time that I went to like this BDSM thing, I can't even say it. I didn't know what I was going to see. It wasn't a sex show or anything. It was like, I don't know, dominance, like submission stuff, people, it was not what I expected, but it also wasn't super outlandish, and the promoters were super nice.
And that's
sorry, I don't know how to serve drugs. I'm sorry. It's just I missed that part of etiquette school.
It's funny, like they made the comment about like getting over the hurdle. When the first rave I went to, I didn't know what to expect. I was 16 and I was in a driver's school, and I was a little punk rock ska kid, and the girl that was taking the driver's ed class next to me was like, I think you'd like this, and she just hands me a flyer, and it was all, I mean, I've got it somewhere, it's horrible computer graphics and a map, and I just happened to like vaguely have an idea of where that was in my like home county of like Ohio. I'm like, all right, I think I could drive there. I was like, with a driver's like learning permit, like going out to this night, parking my like Dodge Colt in a field, like, okay, here we go.
I had a Dodge Horizon.
Nice.
Plymouth Horizon, Dodge Omni. They were the same company. Yeah. Graves.
When that poor car gave up the ghost, the engine literally fell out of it. Like, I think I got an accident at like 15 miles an hour, and like the engine literally just popped off its mounts. I'm like, well, that's a thing.
I don't know who Space Poots is. They said Sunny Bear. Was that a party in Richmond, Virginia?
Maybe.
I definitely went to something in Richmond, like the summer of '96. Went to a rave in Richmond that was like on an island, but it was in a warehouse on the island. And it was Trace and Carl K. It was like Trace played like the entire Tech Steppin' album. Yeah.
Nice.
Rave up.
Man, shouts out to Richmond. Like Joanna O from Turnstile Records brought me down there to play on the radio a bunch and then play in front of her store. And that place was a saving grace after DJ Hut closed up for me. So
Yo, we haven't even talked about record stores.
Oh man.
This is gonna be like a 7-hour.
I mean, we're already over time for you, so I mean, feel free to like call it close if you're.
I'm not quite ready to call it a night yet. I can go a little bit more. I feel bad. I met Joanna O maybe once or twice. There's one time I went to Richmond. I went to Richmond for like a street art festival. Yeah, the Riverwalk, because Jeff Soto. Like I love art. Like I collect prints and stuff like that. Jeff Soto was doing a wall. Hence, I don't know if there were like people that did wall. And my buddy Todd and I went for the day, and we went by Turnstile. And I'm going. I'm sure I bought a record or 2 records.
Yeah.
But and hopefully, I'm not like 2.5 hours into this. Like I hope I didn't become like Mr. Name Drop, because I feel like when I met Joanne, that I became very like name droppy. But it was like trying to find like in my head, I'm like trying to find the common connections to that person, because I briefly mentioned Matt Nordstrom, MR. Like he used to do stuff as MRN, call him Matty. He's half a Nada Strom with Dave Nada, and Matt went to school in Richmond at some point, and that's how I met a bunch of the Richmond guys. Like I played at what was Matt Nuco's? Was it Matt Nuco? There was a guy named Matt Nuco, but you're not from Richmond. You just met. There was people from Richmond, so like I met Will Miles, I met Chell, whose wife is now on Top Chef like this season.
Oh really?
We went to Richmond for a baby moon before our first kid. The food there is amazing because like the rent is cheap and chefs can try stuff out there. But Chell is the bar manager for this German restaurant, like Metzger Butchery or something. His wife's the chef, and she's on Top Chef this season.
Cool.
Chell's been on Function. Like Chell and Will Miles have a very strong pedigree. Like they have a strong discography. Super nice guys.
Both of them.
Aaron Il Omen. Yeah.
He's up north now, I think near you now.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I haven't talked with him in years. I should reach out to him.
Yeah. Definitely hit him up. I think he's even on the Twitchers now. So
the Twitchers. Yeah. It's funny. There's a guy named Overload who used to be in a DJ crew with Diesel Boy and Jason Mouse. They used to be called 3 the Hard Way, like early mid 90s. Overload lived in DC for a little while, and he's from Massachusetts. He was like a Boston drum and bass DJ. He's back up in this area. Like we got in touch right before I moved up here, but like the past year I haven't hung out with anyone. But that's someone else I've tried to connect with. I've met a couple. I've been to Elements twice, so I've met a couple people from there. It's hard. I feel like, here I'm talking about DC and like I love DC and like I'm so involved and I'm still into the music, but like now everyone I talk to is either old friends or it's people I've met through Discords. But yeah, so many tangents because Joanne record shop, I felt like a jerk afterwards because I felt like very name droppy. But then I was in Richmond 2 years later. It was New Year's weekend. We went on New Year's Day. We were like, let's just go to Richmond for like 3 days. And we went and like ate amazing. But tried to go to our shop, and the shop wasn't open. It's just like the door was locked, but you could see there was stuff in it, and they just never opened. So I never got to go there. Did they shut it down? They shut it down.
They shut it down. God, let me think about this. It was probably my daughter's just turned 7, so about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like my last picture in Turnstile Records, I've got a baby strapped to my back. So I'm like, I was like, how old's my daughter?
Yeah, I think one of the first outings we took with my daughter. So my daughter just turned 5.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first public outings we took was to Bump and Grind.
Nice.
Yeah.
Support Bump and Grind. Actually, Joe's Record Paradise, Joe, no, his son.
Johnson.
Thank you. I was like, my brain just totally locked up on that. Super, super nice. And just let my daughter run absolute pure havoc in the 45s.
Yeah. Johnson, I don't know Johnson super well, but like he was a house DJ.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby J, who DC, like he's someone to talk to about DC drum and bass, because like the whole upfront thing, like Bobby J and Yvonne, they had been in a crew together. Johnson ended up being the cousin of a friend of mine who dated Ben Coe at one point. This woman, Annie Lee, who Silver Spring, the Lee family.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that was like her uncle and cousin, the Joe's Record Paradise.
Wow.
It got to a point with Johnson that he would call me or send me a message when he bought collections that had drum and bass, and would let me pick through them before he would put them out.
That's awesome. So
Bobby J sold a lot of records.
I've been working on that connection for a while to get to that point with him.
Yeah.
To the point that he'll like tease it, and I'll be like, so have you priced it yet? I'll come.
But he let me come to his house. The problem, he wanted to do a mix with the records he got, because Bobby had like a lot of early Liquid Funk stuff. And so John's like, yeah, you can come by my house, pick through the records, let me know what you want. I'll price it and give it to you, but I'm not going to price it until I do this mix. I think it was like a year before I got the records. But there's a Johnny L track in there that's just like, it's so ravey. It's the Hurt You So. Like, it's like breakbeat hardcore. Just, love it.
Oh man, one of my first times going to Joe's Record Paradise, I guess it was the original, the one with the big warehouse in the back.
Mm-hmm. It's a brewery now.
Yeah.
That's like their third or fourth location. Like, they've moved so many times in Montgomery County.
Really? That was the first one that I knew. And when I went there the first time, there was a punk band playing like in the back. No, the punk band was in the front. And I didn't even realize that there was more to the store till someone goes, well, aren't you going to go to the rest of the store? And I'm like, what? Well, it was like opening to like Mecca. Like, oh,
Grocery store.
It was almost as bad as the first time I saw Amoeba Records in San Francisco. Like that.
I just got a record from there.
Oh, nice. When I went there, I was so gun shy. I didn't even know what to buy. Like, it was like my brain just locked up. I'm like, there's too many records.
It's now I'm like a heat seeker missile. Like, you can let me loose in a secondhand shop. I'm guaranteed that I will find you like something that has a drum and bass tune on it. So my mom retired and moved to Delaware. She lives out near Rehoboth. Mm-hmm. She actually lives in a town called Lewis.
Yeah.
And the downtown area of Lewis has like a little shopping district. And I found like a secondhand record store, and going, it's all like, vinyl's cool. Like, check out vinyl. Look at all this like old rock stuff. And I'm flipping through and I'm like, found it, Dylan, like Outbreak. So I was like, I did it again. Keep doing it. Granted, some of the remix, like some of the stuff I find is like a remix, like on some random like Palm Pictures, or it's just like this weird, I don't want to call it superpower. It's like a sense.
Spidey sense. Nice.
Yeah. Record stores, though. I think this is a good topic to talk about.
All right.
It was Music Now that was in Georgetown.
Was it?
And it became Yoshitoshi.
Okay, I was gonna say I knew it as Yoshitoshi. I didn't know it as Music Now.
Yeah. So Wednesdays was when the new releases got put on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember when Slant started working there, but he was the drum and bass. He eventually became the drum and bass buyer. I didn't even talk. So, are you familiar with the names Double A and Twist?
No, do tell.
Double A and Twist were a a duo based out of Montreal.
Okay.
They are the last artist to release on Basement Records, if you're familiar with like that old label.
Mm-hmm.
They then started producing stuff as Dune. And they had stuff on Breakbeat Science. They started their own record label called Dune Recordings. But there was like a 1-year period where they moved to DC. Like they got booked. They played in DC pretty regularly from 95 to like 99, 2000. But they moved to DC at some point. And the first time I ever saw an emu sampler was when Aaron Double A, he played my radio show, my college radio show. And I gave him a ride home, and they were living in like a row house over by Union Station. And he invited me in to see the studio. And that was like the first time I had seen a drum and bass like focus. It wasn't a drum and bass studio, but it had all the tenements of a drum and bass, production at that time. There was a Mackie. I'm pretty sure they had a Mackie mixing desk. They had the emu sample. They had a 6400 classic. And then they had, I'm pretty sure they had an Atari running Cubase. And that was like the first, he didn't play me anything. He didn't turn it on, let me hear anything. But that was like the first time I had seen that setup. And Aaron was the drum and bass buyer at Music Now or Yoshitoshi for a little bit. It must have been 98 because he gave me the white label sampler for the Wormhole album. He didn't get he held it for me to buy. But Wednesdays were the day to go to that shop, and it became a ritual with Benko. And then eventually there were some other guys we kept running into at that shop, and it ended up being Matt Nordstrom and his best friends Will Reeby, and there was a third guy and I can't remember his name, but Matt and Will, I hit it off pretty well. I took a trip to England, New Year's 98, 99. My friend Anna, who'd been part of my radio show, she did a year abroad in Sheffield. 8 of us went over for New Year's Eve. Stayed in the dorm, like her dorm the school was closed for the winter break.
Mm-hmm.
But the dorm would rent rooms for like £5 a night.
Oh, nice.
Something super, super cheap. So yeah, we took this pilgrimage to England. Granted, you would think London, but no, we went north to Sheffield first. Spent 4 days in Sheffield. Went to so many shows, so many used record stores. Went to Manchester for a day. I went to not Black Market, Eastern Bloc.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another shop. Like I may have met Marcus Intellects and Sapo on that trip and not realized it, or some other big Manchester drum and bass person, because they all worked. It seemed that they all worked in the record shops at that time. The other thing is the trip to Sheffield. We hung out with MC Power from Mental Power,
nice,
from Formation Records.
Mm-hmm.
DJ SS used to play DC pretty regularly, because of the whole fusion bass rush thing. And we had him and the Mental Power guys play our radio show. We somehow finagled them coming and playing our radio show. And Power, I think his name was Patrick, kept in touch with Anna. So when Anna moved over there for the year, she got in touch. He hung out, like showed her around, like was super nice to her. We go to this New Year's party. We're like the only Americans in this like 3,000 person thing. Like the lineup was amazing lineup for us. Like it could have been just like, oh, Peche's opening, like that type of thing, or oh, Fabio's the opener. We're there, and like Power is like shouting us out on the mic like the whole night. There's also a point Tech Itch and Dakota were like the big headliner, and the girls knew them. Molly and Juhi and Anna knew them. And they kept going into the booth and stealing from their beer rider. Like they had like 2 cases of Red Stripe, and like we're just drunk on Red Stripe in this like UK rave. NY Sushi, I still have the flyer. Designer Republic did the flyer.
Nice.
Apparently it's worth money, but I'm keeping it. We went to London for 4 days. I went to Black Market Records every day. I was such like a drum and bass nerd. Like I didn't realize that like girls were into me. It was just like, oh, you like drum and bass? Let's talk about drum and bass. We're gonna go to Metalheads, right? Like no idea that like someone was interested in me. I was just so. I am a drum and bass robot. There's nothing that exists outside of drum and bass. Went to Black Market so many times. I think we went to like something with Bongo. There were a few record shops and there were some secondhand shops. There were 3 of us that were DJs. We probably brought 200 records back with us.
Nice.
And Section 5. We went to Section 5. I remember that. Adam F. had put stuff on Section 5. Like the original Circles is on Section 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that shop is like affiliated with Moving Shadow in some way. But came back and I can't remember if Slant was working at Music Now at that point or Yoshi Toshi. Whoever was working was like, yeah, why don't you bring in some of the records you bought in England because we probably won't see them for a few months. Why don't you bring them in and you can play them on the system? Like not DJ, just play the records. So if you remember the people I mentioned 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
Matt and Will and them, they came to the shop, they hung out, and it's like, we recognize you from parties, but we've never talked. And we started seeing them at more parties and talking more. And like this friendship that developed from going to the record shop and then running into the people at the party, like the same people at the parties, like developed. Like Will ended up meeting my friend Juhi at a Too Tough party, like a 4th of July Ed Russian Optical Too Tough party. I think it was at Club Danko. And he was moving to North Carolina and she lived in New York. There was something that happened and they had this long distance relationship and then he gave up North Carolina and moved up to New York to be near her. And, you know, it's just funny, like all the little side stories that happen with stuff. But yeah. So I was really good friends with Matt for a while. I'm still in touch with him. I still talk with Will a bit. I know that Matt has. Are you familiar with the artist Polar?
No.
You know his K.
Yes. Okay.
With TVs. T and TB grew up together. Matt bought Polar's Emu sampler, like his original Emu sampler, with a hard drive in it. Thing never booted up, and it's been in his parents' basement for like 22 years.
Oh wow!
And I'm just like, can I have it? I could maybe put the hard drive in a sled. Like I might be able to extract data from it. Like what's on the hard drive? and then Will has his record. Like Will had a roommate in New York that released on Offshore Records. I don't know if you remember Offshore. Brett DJ Clever, who worked at Breakbeat Science, started like more of an avant-garde drum and bass label. Will's roommate was this guy David, whose artist name was Graphics, and he had a couple of things come out on Offshore. But Will, his whole record collection is like in Matt's parents' basement. Like there's a house in Springfield, Virginia that probably has a gold mine of drum and bass in it.
That gives me heart palpitations because isn't he in like Australia now?
Who?
Will?
Oh, no, not Will Miles.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant Will Miles. I was like, what?
No, Will Reevy. But I know Will Miles because of Matt and Matt's time in Richmond. So, yeah, I ran into Will and Chell at Flash sometime. Yeah, there was a split 10-inch with Ohm Unit, or not Ohm Unit, Ohm Resistance and Offshore.
Nice.
I forget what the name of it, but like, you know, there were Funkatech, like Echo from Funkatech did something to represent one of the side. There's a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, Music Now. Modern Music was the Baltimore shop. We didn't talk about Baltimore that much.
No. But in DC, we also had 10-inch dance records. We had DJ Hut. We had Capital City.
Yeah, 12-inch dance became DJ Hut. Like when they changed ship, they changed branding. It was the same shop.
See, it's funny because I was ordering records from 12-inch dance, and then when I moved here, DJ Hut was the thing, which now explains why I could never find 12-inch dance anywhere.
You found it was rebranded.
Yeah. Whoops. It was also the same place that I didn't know for years I'd been having a elongated conversation about blaxploitation films with Sam the Man Burns, and then one day I finally go to his set, and it goes back to that, like you never know your DJs, you know, you don't see the booth, you only hear the sound. And one day I caught him on a Sunday for a Sunday show, and I actually, could see the DJ. I'm like, oh, it's you from DJ. Really, the whole time? Crap.
Did you ever know Johnson? John Johnson, who worked security at U Street Music Hall?
Yes.
So he used to be in Snowball Collective. He also worked at DJ Hut.
Okay.
I didn't really, I knew him by face back at DJ Hut. I didn't really know him until he worked at U-Haul. He's a super nice guy. I feel like that, like there's so many, I had like a lot of anxiety, I think, at times, and talking with people was like always weird for me at times. And then you always, that hurdle, you get over the hurdle and you're like, oh, they're actually cool. They're like, they're not, a jerk. They're not,
they're human.
Yeah, they're human. And maybe I can be human too. So Capital City Records. Mm-hmm. So I was not the drum and bass buyer when they first opened, but I was like the drum and bass floor person. Like the drum and bass buyer was owned by a brother and sister. Mm-hmm. I told you in the email, it was Ray and Stephanie Stone. Mm-hmm. Ray was more background. He was like a programmer. Stephanie was like the public owner. She was going to run the shop, and they were both big crate diggers. Like they were big into sampling and like hip hop and stuff. But Ray was also really into drum and bass. But he was sort of like a background person. He didn't want to be out. Like neither one of them have social media. Like
the only way I found Stephanie was via LinkedIn.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually found a connection to her through my now wife. Like she has a friend that she grew up with in Boston. Because my wife and I were like, yeah, there's no, like, we're from completely different places. She's got a friend that she grew up with that moved to the DC area. That friend is friends with Stephanie from working like in a law office or something.
Oh, wow.
That's Stephen Ray's like dad was like a lawyer. But yeah, Capital City Records started, like, it was going to be 3 focuses: hip hop, house, and drum and bass, because that represented the 3 things that they were into. That's the best way to like sell stuff. I mean, yeah, to have a specialist shop specialize in the stuff that you love. And they asked me if I wanted to work there part-time, because I knew Ray through people. Like they lived in College Park. They had a house in College Park. I think that was my connection to them. It was College Park. And yeah, so Ray took care of ordering the drum and bass. Mm-hmm. But he never worked the floor. Like I was the person. I got Dom from Dom and Roland to play there. He did an in-store.
Nice.
He's one of those like, love your records. Yeah, I don't know. That was a fun time. I only worked there for a year, but the year that I worked there, Rocktacon, mm-hmm. who, if anyone is into bottle service DJs, he was a big bottle service DJ eventually. He was on Scam Artist, like played Los Angeles and stuff, or not Las Vegas. He had like Las Vegas residencies. Then there's this kid Lloyd, DJing was Dom from Dom and Roland. Roland had like really weird stipulations about playing. No one could really talk to him. But Lloyd. So Lloyd and Rocktacon both moved to New York. They both worked at Turntable Lab, and they both became very involved in like the New York dance music scene. Mm-hmm. Who else? There was this kid that used to hang out at the shop named Jeremy Stone. And it turned out he had like family connections to Bobby J. Like Jeremy's family was Korean, but his last name was Stone. Wasn't like a typical Korean last name. He didn't work there, but he was like a scratch DJ nerd kid, that young, super hyper. When I left, I can't remember if he got my job. Like when I left, that opened up a spot. It was either him or Ramon. There were these twin brothers that were like into house, but like one went to University of Maryland and wasn't super into the party scene, and the other twin was Ramon, and he was part of like Bobby J's circle of friends. Like we're still in touch on Instagram or whatever. But Ramon and Jeremy ended up taking spots there. Jeremy Stone is now like some New York man of the moment chef. He doesn't go by Jeremy. He goes by his birth name of Jeremiah. Because I ate at his restaurant one time, and because I had been in touch and was like, "You were going to come through New York, like we want to check out your restaurant." It was like a chef course thing, you can't order anything. And we're there. I asked the waiter. I was like, "Oh, is Jeremy here tonight?" He was like, "Who? Oh, you mean Jeremiah?" Like, no, he's off tonight. I was like, the whole point of coming here was like try his restaurant and like see him for the first time in years. But yeah, that's not drum and bass.
Wow.
Cattle City Records. Yeah, I think the shop ran for about 6 years. I think they closed the digital, the digitalization of dance music or music in general. They couldn't keep up with the rent. Maybe I don't know. They didn't give me the story about why they were closing up. It just I think they had their time.
I remember when they disappeared because it was like on and off. Like there was no like real goodbye. Like one day I went and it was locked up. I'm like, okay, well, womp womp. Yeah,
they tried throwing some parties too to like kind of celebrate the shop. I remember they booked mathematics one time. I think they did the party at 5.
They were doing art shows too. The Borf, who was the big graph kid for a while, like completely tagged up their store.
Yeah,
and did a great in-store piece.
Another tangent. I have 2 younger cousins that I think I inadvertently got them interested. Like they're 15 years younger than me, and so when they're like 11 or 12, I like showed them graffiti. Like this is actually pretty cool. Like I like this guy Giant. Like not Obey Giant, but Giant from San San Francisco. Like I showed them some stuff I liked. And then they get into high school and they're like bombing. Like they're like, Borf never disappeared. He's really, it was like, what? Like, you get all the graffiti dirt. My, the one brother who's the older of the 2, I think he's 13 or 14 years younger than me. He got married 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And, so we're at the wedding. And we got sat at the table. The table next to us was all of his like graffiti friends. And he's tripping out because his graffiti friends are like, "Is that Harry Ransom? What's Harry Ransom doing at your wedding?" And there's like 1 or 2 guys in that group of graffiti guys that were into drum and bass. And, my family had no idea. Like the adults thought that I was like, in some sort of drug cult because like I was going to parties in Northeast DC in a neighborhood that they deemed unsafe. There's a lot of race issues like in my family, and they didn't like where I was going, and so I saw on Fox News that silver platters are out, it's gold platters of drugs are in. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you enjoy the drugs on the gold? It's like. You're terrible. Like you guys are so limited in you're afraid of the city and you're limiting yourself to like this viewpoint. But like my cousins, I don't know what their parents may have told them about me. I'm the oldest on both sides of my family. Like my youngest cousin is like 30 years younger than me. And like I guess I was doing dangerous things. Yeah.
But the graffiti kids knew about you.
Yeah, the graffiti. Yeah, they're my cousins. Like, I never went to like I've never been to like the kind of stuff you're into, but like they're asking if you're the drum and bass guy. I was like, yeah. I think one of them it had been a promoter for Up Front.
Nice.
So, yeah. So many crossovers.
It is. It's funny that, graffiti and rave, it was that that street culture. I mean, it goes back to that whole '90s thing. It was just a part of the culture. It's what you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were like so many different funnels into like the rave scene, though. Like, you know, me with the whole MTV and hip hop stuff ending up in drum and bass, and you have like the people that are like in the hardcore punk, or like people that were into like metal and, you know, all these different things. And it just, you know, it made it interesting.
I mean, it was the mixing pot that made it so accessible. I mean, it goes also back to that, like, you could always tell when someone was new, and you always remembered what it felt like when you were that new person coming in. And so, yeah, you handed that new person a bottle of water. It's going to be all right. You know, it's like,
yeah.
Especially if you're tripping balls, it's like, all right, we got you. Let's get some food into you.
You're candy flipping. I never did that. I was strictly, I wasn't a big smoker. Like, yeah, I could probably count on my hands how many times I did E. And like the second hand was like strung out over 8 years, because it was like, you go to the one party, or it's like, I need to stay awake because, like, you know, there's 5 acts that are playing. Like, how am I going to do this? And then I didn't get big into smoking. My trip to LA, I got to play Respect. Probably one of the worst sets I ever played in my life, because I was so strung out from whatever I had smoked with the guy, like the host, like
Machete
12 hours earlier.
Damn.
So that was and I also played a live stream. There's a live stream data set, something like that. Jules would remember those guys. But yeah, I played a live stream, and I was, if there's video of it, like, I was probably sweating, just like, yeah, I probably smoked 3 times after that ever. It wasn't my thing. That's where Fancy Beer Crew comes in.
Fancy beers. Then you just start brewing it. It's all good.
Yeah.
So now here's a question. As we're kind of coming to the end. Who should be the next person in the hot seat?
I think it's got to be like Slant, Stress. It's someone first gen. Like, I don't know. I haven't talked with John Tab in a long time. Like, he could be a good one. I gave you like that email that's got like the dossier. Like,
you definitely gave me a dossier.
Here's some tradecraft. Like, you know, I dropped this, like, you know, in a manila envelope down on Water Street.
I just took a break, a week off of Twitch, and went off grid. I took the dossier and I actually like broke it out. I was like parsing it out, and I've got this because I'm trying to eventually parse all this stuff together. But I've got this it's not manila, it's a manila envelope, shall we say. It just says the DC Spotlight sessions, and inside it's like this spider graph of like who's connected to who and how, and we'll one day make a cohesive story out of all this.
If you could get in touch with Steve Eternal, he'd have a lot of history, because he was going to parties like at the beginning. But I don't think he started DJing until a couple years later. Slant and Stress, like, Stress was the new guy to Too Tough. Like, it was Slant and Andy, and then Stress joined on. Like, Dementia '96 was the first time I think he played as a Too Tough resident. John Tab, Jacob Locks would be a good chat. I mean, there's so many people to talk. Bobby J, if he'd be up for it. I haven't talked, like, there's so many people I'm still connected to. If part of it's like, this is drum and bass is like now my high school class. Like, you have your social media. It's like, oh, I see, like, what, you know, I remember them from senior year, what they're up to. Like, now the drum and bass stuff has kind of become that. So, there's just so many people. And I feel bad because I know that I'm missing so many people.
But that's what makes it fun. I mean, when I got done with the interview I did with Curly Roller, like my main thought was like, and actually even with Billy Lane, my thought was, crap, I missed out so much. We could do a whole second interview and I could completely not touch on the same things.
I would have to be organized. I would have to be like, for this week, I want to talk about this.
Nice.
Talk about me.
So I'm saving Slant till I finally clean out the rest of his collection that's currently sitting in it's a shed, but it's going to get cleaned out here in a hot second from the rest of his basement restoration project. Stress I've got on the line a little bit later on. I think I still got Steve Eternal's contact information when I bought a bunch of records from him back in the day.
Moved up in Maine.
Did he? Right on.
Oh, yeah, I think he's in Maine.
I think I still got his email. And then John Tab, I'll have to dig that one up.
Yeah, I'll see who I can poke to get some info.
Bears.
Your the restoration project for Slant, though, I had some water damage a year ago. I had we had just moved our stuff out of storage into the basement of our new house before we moved in. The first weekend that this stuff was in here, we learned that we had water in the basement. I had about 5 boxes of records, so almost 400 records that took on water. And I remember finding it, posting about it on Facebook and Instagram right then, because I knew that I knew so many record collectors that someone was going to give me do this. It was immediately get them out of the boxes, get it, off the floor, get it on air. So I didn't lose any actual vinyl. I probably had I have a photo on Instagram of it just, you can see all these 31 record sleeves just all over my floor because they were gonna mold. They took on too much water. Most of my metalheads safe.
Nice.
There's a lot of stuff that didn't get damaged at all, but I ended up buying I got a little bit of money from Christmas, gift certificates or something. So I bought a dry vac, a vacuum attachment for record cleaning. It was an Amazon thing that I'm gonna try out.
The shop vac? Or is the vinyl vac?
I got a shop vac, and then I got this extension that's specifically made for records. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the exact one.
Yep.
So I haven't
works
set
like a charm.
Okay, good. I haven't set it all up, but I got the ingredients for the cleaning solution. And then so I don't know in the area you're in, but my wife, when we moved, she got big into this these Facebook community groups. It's buy nothing.
Yep.
And I was like, could you see if anyone has an old record player or turntable? And a half hour later, I had a busted turntable that I'm gonna use as my Lazy Susan. So
God, what did I grab? Well, besides the slip mount on top, Lazy Susan, $5, Amazon.
Actually, let me see if I got it close by. We're 3 hours in. We're now on the show and tell portion.
Okay. Ah. Who is it? I was in Joe's the other day, and Junglist Militia. Do you ever remember those cats?
Yeah, I remember the name. Are those the Respect guys? I thought that may have been Machete's thing.
Was it?
Yeah.
All I know is that there were 3 cases, flight cases. It looked like they had been brutalized, gone through hell and back, that were covered with the Junglist Militia skate shop graphics and all that. And I was just like, so what's in the cases? And he's like, well, records I haven't opened yet. And I'm like, you're killing me. You're absolutely killing me. Could Could we open them up?
Some of the collections he's gotten there, like I have no idea where they came from.
Oh yeah,
So
and I think it was.
we got Pagan.
I'd love to know what's in them, but one day.
But yeah, not only these. So my wife, someone was like, I have no concept of where.
Oh, okay, right on.
So I gutted it out. Like I took all the electric components, so it's just the shell. I'm using a dub plate, a 12-inch dub plate that's like battered. Is artwork by Nick Bulletproof on it, and then a slip mat. So this is what I'll use for the cleaning.
Nice.
All set up. But yeah, just prime. This cleaning the records, sorting my samples, all it's just all procrastination from actually finishing up music. But I am getting music finished. I've been writing like since we got our own place. I've been able to write.
That's awesome.
And I don't know. That also lends to the itch to start DJing again because I would like to be able to play the sounds that I'm into, tie it all together.
It helps.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to do it again and not with vinyl, I'd be looking at a controller, because I mean, price-wise, it's way more cost-effective than buying Pro Gear right now. And what has actually been the most eye-opening thing with Twitch is realizing how many pros don't even have Pro Gear. Like that was I think that was the biggest kick in the teeth when I saw like Uncle Doug and Fabio and like a handful of other like DJs I really look up to, and I'm like, oh, you're all on the same controller that everyone else is on.
You see, that's the one thing is if I were to start playing out again, I don't think that I want to carry a laptop. Like I wouldn't want to have to bring Serato. I don't know. I'm so comfortable with Serato. That's the thing. But if places are using Pioneer gear,
yeah, I would go with the record box USB sticks and call it a day.
There's a fairly new Pioneer controller that has record box and Serato.
Yeah.
Although apparently the record box is the superior set on that particular controller. It's like, yeah. You can do that with Serato too. Like I could build a playlist on one computer and then drop it on a USB. But the thing is, you have to have a computer for Serato. Right with Rekordbox, yeah, you just can plug right into the unit.
Yep.
But I'm terrible at if I had to do a vinyl mix, I would probably need a couple weeks to like practice to get riding the bike. I forget who does the vinyl. There's someone in Virginia that does they were doing like a monthly vinyl only radio show, and like D and I got booked on the same episode, D Infamous.
Yeah. And
it was like the only time I had DJ'd like in 3 years. It was like the first time in like 7 years that I was going to play vinyl like as a DJ. And there's video of it. Some of my mixes are okay. Like I was everything I played I was happy with. But how I presented it was not as clean as I'm surgically clean in Serato. Like I know the line between 0.99 and 0.00 on a track and like how to get there with the key commands. With turntables, it's the condition of the turntables and did you breathe on it wrong? Like there's so much skill to keep it held together for a long. Like, I like longer mixes, but yeah. If I were to play out again, I'd have to know. I feel that I would need to know how to use Rekordbox and Pioneer gear, and then just rock up with a USB.
I think eventually I'll probably end up going some form of Rekordbox. We'll see. I might need upgrading a mixer. Womp.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is the mixer I have right now is like this little Akai that has Serato built. It turns out when I bought it, I was like, oh, it has Serato. It comes with a Serato license. And it's a mixer. It doesn't come with the DVS license. Like I have to pay like another $900 to use it with turntables.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had the same problem with Rekordbox because Rekordbox does come with it. and I've got the license. I just now have the problem where the mixer I have is a Serato enabled Pioneer 900, not the one that Rekordbox likes, and so it doesn't recognize it. So I'm like, oh god damn it. Womp 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 technology.
Yeah. The other thing with production, I like a lot of different music outside of drum and bass. Like drum and bass, definitely there's a period where that's all I listen to. But then you get into like, I love Marcus Intellects. Like, just what he left behind, is, we're gonna feel for so long. His interest in Detroit techno definitely influenced me to look into techno. And there's like a lot of techno I like. I'm taking part. Are you familiar with an artist named Martin? No. Martyn?
I don't think so.
He originally was a drum and bass artist. He was on DJ Flight's Play Music label. He had some stuff on Revolver, like Solar sub-label. He branched out to like dubstep and like techno. So he's Dutch, but he lives in Sterling. His wife's from Northern Virginia. He's lived in the States since like 2008.
Really?
Yeah, I can tell you about all the people that have lived in the DC area that I know of. Newtone.
Didn't Clute
Hive
live here at some point?
Who?
Clute?
Yep. Clute, when he was in a punk band. Worked at Tower Records in Rockville, told me about it.
Weird.
Yeah. Like early 90s. Clute's awesome. I love him. But where was I? I was talking about record stuff, Rekordbox. Oh, the other styles of music. So I recently saw. I like Eats Everything. He's a very entertaining DJ to watch. Like if you want to see how you could use Pioneer gear, watch his sets. Like the way he works Pioneer gear is incredible. And his big thing is making it doesn't happen in drum and bass because I mean younger people are bootlegging a lot of stuff, like making bootlegs, and like then is eating, like, are you making bootlegs of drum and bass stuff? Is it eating itself? Like, no, there's not supposed to be like an up all night bootleg, like, tear it apart, blah blah. Eats Everything makes a lot of edits for his music, and so that's one thing that I want to. Yeah, Intellects was Trevino, and he's got another thing. Like, there's a posthumous release that's a house thing. It's there's a name that like they use for directors that don't want their name put on the movie, but Marcus Intellects put out a record under that, like a posthumous release under that name. It's like super nice, like deep house type stuff. But yeah, Eats Everything, makes edits. And one of the things I'm going through my head, if I'm going to start DJing again, how am I going to set myself apart? Like, sure, I might have some music that other people don't have, but if I'm only mixing like 2 tracks together, like I never got into 3-deck mixing. There's so many people that do 3-deck mixing. It's like, what are ways that will make me, like, what's going to make someone want to listen to a Ransom set? So I've got the idea, like, do I explore making edits for myself? Like making, it turns out I didn't realize at the time, but I used to make edits. When I first got into mixing off of CDs, I would get tracks from people, or I would buy tracks, and I might cut the first 16 bars because there's nothing to mix with in it. And that's an edit. But, what if I start exploring like different types of edits? Like, how do I build like this little like arsenal of edits for myself? Do you follow Jump Up stuff much? Like current Jump Up stuff? Like, like the Souped Up label? I like the Souped Up stuff. I find it fun. There's something that I just find very like pleasing about some of the Souped Up stuff. And there's a guy that just had an EP called Mosey. I just started following him on Instagram in the past like couple of weeks, and I find his content hilarious. Like, there's something with like a porn star, and she's like, you have 24 hours with me to do anything you want. What would you do? And then it cuts to Mosey. He was like, right, this is Rekordbox. What I want you to do is to drag, and she starts to explain. Like, I'm like, what if I take that and add it to one of his tracks and make like just a little edit that's like a nod to like, you know, this goofy thing he did. You know, I don't know. It's stuff to explore. You know, I write it down and then like maybe someday I'll get to it.
I mean, I have an MPC full of ska and punk chopped up files that I was one day going to make an entire drum and bass, like third wave ska set just because I wanted to.
Go for it.
It was actually Operation Ivy that got me on it. I was like, I could totally do an amen break off this drum riff.
Look, I'm going to post a link to it because
Okay.
The Mosey thing, I don't know. I didn't talk about production too much.
Nah.
I did stuff with Heist.
Yeah.
I booked sessions with him for a while, and I might have. I'm supposed to have something come out on one of his labels,
mm-hmm.
and I think the last session I did with him is like early 2019. Yeah, Jim Heist. I learned a lot from him. My drums like improved so much doing session with him.
Nice.
But last year I started doing stuff with Filth, who is he's more of a dispatch artist guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is with Filth, Heist technique wise amazing, but I'm not super into a lot of his music. I like a lot of stuff he did with Metalheads. And like he's been around for a long time. Filth, different approach, different person, different resources you get, different cost.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had some mutual friends with him, and I'll do a session with him like every 3 months or so. And usually I book a 2-hour session, but we usually start it an hour early and we just talk. And we just,
nice.
It's like having someone like this, partly, and I'm now looking at time, it's like 3 hours and 15 minutes into this. It's because like, I'm like, oh, it's adult and we have similar interests. And I just blurt out like, amen break for fun. Like, we need more assembly line shouts like in our tunes. With him, it's just like, different experience being in England, but we'll talk about like some music and whatnot. And, the connection to Mosey, like he's friends. Like I never pieced together because like I still have those silos. Like, oh, this is like a dark techie person, or this is a a jump up person. Mm-hmm. But they're all friends. Like they all hang out in the same places. They know each other. It turns out that they're like they have a roommate. Like someone's roommate like makes one thing and this other person like. That's one of the things I talked about with Filth not too long ago, because there was a period of time where it's like D-Bridge, Rockwell, Alex Perez, like they all lived in a house together.
No shit.
Yeah.
Talk about a house. That would have been wild.
I'm going to say thank you to Guac. Cheers for the
serious. Shouts to that man like Guac.
I think that gets me access to a lighter again.
you get a lighter.
Some of the Twitch stuff is still kind of new to me.
It's some of the stuff I'm still wrapping my brain around. And I mean, I've been now on this platform since 2017, and it's still, I mean, I'm just starting to crack it.
So I wanted to, the Alex Perez playing New Zealand. Alex Perez emigrated to New Zealand. His fiance apparently is like a Kiwi, so that's how they ended up out there. The other flip side, I guess I should, I don't know, I guess I'm okay saying it. Killjoy, who's one half of Concord Dawn,
mm-hmm.
moving to DC this summer.
Yeah.
Echo from San Francisco put us in touch. They were supposed to move out here last year.
Uh-huh.
And Echo was like, "You still live in DC, right?" I was like, "No, I moved." He goes, "Well, Killjoy from Concord Dawn is moving there." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, you should talk to him." So yeah, his wife works for the New Zealand federal government, I think, and like has a role that's sending them to DC for like 2 or 3 years. So, and the other
That's
thing,
awesome.
he's got a daughter that's like my daughter's age. So it's like, I'm not going to be in DC, but like here, you know, I gave him a list of like people and venues, and then it was like, you know, the National Zoo is amazing, and like you're going to have the Smithsonian. It's just like, you find those, it's like, oh, you like drum and bass, and you're a person with these other things that we can relate on. So,
and here, this is where you go eat, and here's all the things you need to know about DC before you get in there.
I don't know a whole lot. His name's Evan. There's a whole lot I don't really, you know, you only learn so much through like Facebook messages.
Yeah.
But I do know that he loves coffee, and he wants to make sure that he has good coffee.
Well, that can be arranged.
I told him about Bump and Grind. So
Yeah, I was gonna say Bump and Grind, by far, you know, a fan favorite here. Although recently, the house has just been introduced to Swings High Mountain, and I'm having a hard time not enjoying it every morning.
So I'm the weird. I like iced tea. That's my caffeine fix. And so I'll usually drink iced tea and lemonade, but I've had to cut out the lemonade related to my only having a beer like Thursday through Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to cut back on the lemonade because there's too much sugar in it.
Aye.
But that's usually my caffeine pick me up.
That's where you just start making all that stuff. I mean, make your own ginger ale, make your own lemonade, cut out the sugar.
Yeah.
Realize that, you know, bananas and potatoes are starch, and that's just sugar. Your gut doesn't know the difference between a potato and a candy bar.
So I could cut out the Snickers and eat. I haven't had Snickers like over a year, but like I could substitute with waffle fries.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. So
actually, on the production tip, if you ever get a chance to team up with Graham from Serial Killers, his sound design is just ridiculous, and he will deep dive and tangent and like tear it down to like the simplest format to explain it, and or if like you're already there, he's like, all right, cool, let's just move on. And
you said the guy's name's Graham?
Graham, yeah, I'll send you his link. He's Serial Killers is the label, and his group, him and his partner, I'm now spacing on the name, but yeah,
that guy Mosey had a release on that label.
Right on. Now Graham is a technician, and I love his work. Like, but you know, that was definitely one of those. When I met the hero, I was like, and meeting the hero is a good time too. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of him.
So yeah, there's so many people like that are more available now. Like the whole knowledge, like there's a lot you can find on your own, but then there's a lot you can just like book studio time with someone, even if it's virtually, and they're gonna show you. I mean, you can show someone how, like the whole TV thing, like he showed them how to use a sampler. Like they didn't use it exactly like how he did, and they showed me how to use it. Like it, you know, changes in different ways, but that's like where the cool stuff happens.
Exactly.
Like, you know, you make the mistakes, but like some of the mistakes sound awesome, and then you're rinsing them out.
Exactly. Now, my next push is to befriend Busy Bee, because I want to know how those Joker bass lines were built from back in the day.
Joker, I wasn't a big fan of Joker record. Like, it was too jump uppy. Like, but also like I bet there's a lot of stuff that I would listen to now. Like if I listen to a Clips tune now, I'm like, this is amazing. But like when Clips first came out, like the whole Dogs on Acid, it's like, it's Clips, like what jump up. It's like jump up's kind of fun. The only Joker record I have in my collection is a Pete Voyager remix.
Really?
Yeah, it's so dreamy. Like it's just such a cool track. And it's because Diesel Boy played it on a mixtape that I heard it.
It's funny, for like Joker was, when I got into drum and bass, I had a DJ hero friend of mine who was getting out. He's getting into deep house, and he was like, hey, you know, you can go through the collection, take whatever you want. I ran out of his house with 3 crates of records, and he didn't stop me. So, that was a good time. But he had a good chunk of that Joker disc collection at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a lot of Jackson 5, and I'm trying to think of who else was sampled at the time. But it was like that sort of era. It was like in some Busta Rhymes as well. But it was such a classic sound for me, and it was like playing from the hip hop that I already enjoyed, and now I'm gonna play that with this rolling bass line that's just gonna like pummel a subwoofer. I was like, all right, all in.
I feel like there's a lot of music that's been coming out that I probably will appreciate more if and when I hear it on a sound system.
Yeah.
Like I've tried to find Bandcamp Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to buy a little bit just to like spread support, but like find stuff that I want to have in my collection. Like records, it's either old stuff or it's like my 3 favorite releases of the year that I'll get on vinyl. But like listening to like all this other stuff, it's just there's a lot of stuff I feel like I skipped over that like, well, it's on a label I like and it's an artist I usually like, but I'm just not super into it. But it's like, I bet if I hear it in a set somewhere, it's going to unlock the track in some way. It just, the magic that comes out like in those instances.
There's so many records that I feel like that's the same thing. Like I'll be flipping through old CDs and like, running down or Shazamming them. Which, man, if Shazam had been around in the 90s, it would have been Game Set Match. But trying to find all these old tracks, and you listen to them without the mix, and you're like, how did you decide to choose that? I mean, it works. It's amazing. But if I just listened to it on its own, I would completely passed it over. DJ Hype does a lot of that, where it's just like he goes from like a dark heavy tune to a light instrumental to like something that's a little bit more intelligent to another, like some sort of a jump up, and I'm like, wow, you're scatterbrained, but it really works.
Oh, going back to my edits.
Yeah.
DJ Hazard, there's a couple tracks of his that I'm like, I just want to take out the sample because like the rest of the track, like, but it's just dumb. I'll still play it.
Right on. All right, mate. Well, I think we've kind of come to the end.
I don't know. There is this offer for big follows.
Oh no! Oh, look at that. We did.
I don't want to be famous.
Nope. Boom. Goodbye. Not tonight, at least. But man, thank you so much. We've ran through 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Exploring your life in the DnB scene. Thank you so much for spending the time.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
Yeah, keep in touch, like just in general.
Definitely. Before we close out and go find someone to raid, any shouts you want to give out?
Yeah, thanks for the people that hung out tonight. Guac, Pagan, Space Poots, let's see, Kella. Thanks, Ocean, for having me.
Hey, no worries.
It's fun. It's like I'm sure that we've known of each other for a long time, but this is. I think this is like the first time we've actually talked.
Yeah.
I
vaguely remember you from Capital City Records. That's why I was like, I was kind of pushing you about it. I'm like, I think.
It's like, hopefully I wasn't a jerk.
Nah.
Just, so much. This scene's bigger than sometimes we realize, and smaller too. But yeah, it's awesome to see people are connecting. Congrats on the work with the Twitch channel. And
thanks, man.
Like that's like this is like your main focus. Like you had a blog, like you still have it, but like this is.
So the blog is for 2021. We're trying to convert it over and make it into a nicer, proper website. I've got a partner in crime that's doing a lot of write-ups on that end. And yeah, we went from being well, we went from podcasting to live radio to this, and this form factor works at the moment. So I'm just going to keep rolling on it until we can play outside again.
Yeah. That's one thing I want to bring. So I originally, last year, 2020, I started out, I wanted to write about records, and, like specifically records from my collection. And like the story, like I have like a hashtag, I've got like a naming convention. It's like, you know, I mention the record, I get put pictures of the record, then it's like, you know, what I like about it, then what it makes me think about. Like, you know, this record is definitely like makes me think of this friend or like this event or like traveling to this place. I did like 7 or 8 of them, and pandemic started. Like I have a folder of like 500 record, like you know, that's the spindle like pictures of records that I want to write about. So I'm gonna try to get back into doing that, because I connected with people online that are into collecting records, and it's not just talking about like a big tune, but like, you know, some of these records are like really important to us. Like, I mean, there's stuff that's like going to be important to me that's just like, it's not going to mean anything to you. And you just be like, oh yeah, it's a record from like that label. But like for me, it's like, I was at this event, like I heard this person play it, like I was hanging out with these people, or, you know, I spent time in this place, and like that record is an imprint of that time. And so I find that aspect of it is like really important to me. It's interesting to me. It's important to me. And it's like trying to find a way that it makes it exciting. Like to hear someone talk about what excites them can be exciting.
If that project needs a home, hit me up. Because I've got a venue for it.
Maybe we'll do something like cross post it with like, you know, I don't know. We'll talk. We'll email.
Yeah.
I'll send you a link to like what I've done so far.
Yeah, dude, that sounds awesome.
You know, I didn't even talk about dalliances and breakbeat, like actual breakbeat. I had told a friend like, you should listen because I'm going to talk about you a little bit, but I never did.
No.
So breakbeats are fun.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, let's go raid someone. You know, we're gonna go visit Kennedy. No, actually, DJ Moses is up, and I've been meaning to raid into him for a hot second. So we're gonna head over that way.
All right.
So, one and all, thank you so much for hanging out again. My name is Librarian. This has been Harry Ransom. It has been absolutely a pleasure hanging out with you, Harry.
If you make it to New England, we'll grab a beer.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Well, let's get that raid moving.